Today, I got a message from my husband's supposed mistress informing me that my husband has been cheating on me with her. And right now, I'm honestly devastated by this news and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, to start things out, I'm currently out of town and I got a follow request both on Facebook and Instagram from a girl. I get a few of these regularly, but with this one, I somehow had this weird gut feeling. Now, instead of accepting her request, I messaged her asking if we had known each other somewhere, to which she replied, well, we don't. She then said that she understands that it might be awkward, but she would like to discuss something with me in person as soon as possible. Now, since I'm out of town and she is a complete stranger, I said, well, let's just discuss it online. But it's here that she dropped the absolute banger of a news that apparently this news was about my husband. And I immediately knew that the worst is coming. She said that he is cheating on me and that I deserve better. She said that it's not continuing anymore as he did break up with her today. However, she told me that it started a few months ago when they first met online and then met in person. And also, she knew that he was married because he told her. She was asking why he is cheating and why he got married in the first place, to which he replied that he felt pressure from the others, which is really weird because we've kind of been together for like 10 years when he proposed. He also apparently said that marriage is just a big, expensive party and nothing more than a piece of paper. I then asked her why they broke up, and she told me that because he is basically happy in our relationship and he doesn't want to risk it anymore. She then said that he was visiting her place when I was coming late from work and even had sleepovers when I was out of town. Now, after hearing all of this, I told her not to tell him that I know, and that I'm about to confront him in person once I'm back home. Now, just to give a bit of background, we've been married for 5 months, and now I'm finding out that he basically started cheating on me right after that, still telling me that he loves me in the process. And at this point, I feel so betrayed. I thought I found my person, and now it's all gone, and I feel like I'm getting back to square one in life. I mean, I even told him that I want to start a family next year. I have no idea what to do after I tell him I know everything, because I literally can't even cry. I just have this hollow feeling in my chest and this feeling of numbness. I also have no idea why she would tell me now and not sooner. What should I do? Before we go any further, the original poster actually has some updates, and this is what they had to say. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I was wide awake the entire night, reading absolutely everything and pretty much chatting in some of my DMs. So seriously, to everybody who commented, thank you so much. I also already had a scheduled message for her, and it said the following. I was thinking about what you said yesterday, and the only thing I'm missing in all of this is any kind of evidence. I mean, this is a really big accusations, and words are against words. And yes, this is what I want to send, but I decided not to send it. Firstly, at the moment, I'm not able to handle seeing any proof or evidence with my own eyes. I just can't face this yet, and I don't want to know any of the details. I never wanted her to reach out to me and throw her burden on me instead of carrying it herself. Secondly, I know my husband, at least to a point, and believe it or not, he is kind of a sensitive and caring person. I know once I drop it, even without evidence, he is not going to gaslight me, and he definitely will admit it. If he would start saying that it's not true, then I will just demand to look through his stuff, or I would reach out to her to get some evidence. But at this point, talking to her brings out so much anger and anxiety in me. Now, here's the thing. I know he will be asking me how my weekend was with my parents, and I'm gonna tell him that I met some childhood friends and actually made a new friend, and that he wouldn't believe what happened to her. She found a married guy that she was supposed to spend her weekend with when his wife was traveling, but he broke up with her instead. And so she decided to tell his wife. And plot twist, you're the guy, I'm the wife, and my friend's name is the name of the girl who reached out to me. And then I'm gonna wait after I say this for him to process it, and then I'll start having a conversation. Now, we've known each other since we were like 17 years old. I consider this man to be my best friend. In fact, I was just rereading the vow that he wrote me and thinking of the past few months about how there was nothing wrong, basically. He didn't give me any bigger clue to worry about anything, and in fact, he bought me my favorite flowers last week just like that. So with that in mind, I honestly just don't know what I'll do yet. It's also up to him and how he approaches this whole situation. Now, I know to a majority of you, I will look naive and stupid, not learning from my lesson, but for me, the marriage is something so sacred and something that I've wanted with him since day one. And so for me, it's really hard to just let it go without trying any kind of counseling. Maybe the end is inevitable, and I'm just prolonging something that will come eventually, but I can't see myself making any decision in this state of mind because right now I'm just not sure what to do. Okay, this is the weirdest one I've read in a while. Are you kidding me right now? You mean to tell me you have someone who could provide you evidence for your husband cheating on you, and you want to sit there and be like, no, I don't want to look at it. He loves me so much. He got me flowers. I don't want to lose what we have. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? You don't have anything. Like, your husband is being accused of cheating. That's not an accusation that just comes out of nowhere, dude. Like, if I was in that situation and I found out my significant other was cheating from some random Facebook message, I would be like, okay, you need to prove it. Show me pictures, text messages, or for anything. Like, literally show me proof that this is happening and I will absolutely bring this to my husband. But for you to sit there and be like, oh, I was gonna send it, but now I'm not going to. Like, that is so dumb. That is so unbelievably dumb in my opinion. Because either this lady is lying or your husband is actually cheating on you. And I would much rather prove this lady wrong than be like, oh, well, we'll just never know the truth. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you're like, you're probably gonna think I'm naive. Because yeah, I think the original poster is absolutely naive. And if you really want to find any kind of closure and actually know the truth, then sending a message to this lady for any kind of evidence is like the only way to make that happen. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not disclosing my medical history to a stranger after they asked me the very intrusive medical question about how I became an amputee? Here's how it all went down. To start things out, I'm a 27-year-old female and I'm an amputee. Ever since my amputation, countless people have asked me what happened to me. At first, I wasn't bothered by it, and sometimes I would even poke fun by saying like a shark bit it off or some other random story. However, as time progressed, it began to upset me more and more. I would get stopped in the middle of a parking lot, stopped in a busy aisle of the store, stopped on my way to and from appointments, etc. But the part that bothered me the most is that they didn't even have the decency to introduce themselves. They didn't make small talk or even ask my name first. Like, children are actually infinitely more respectful than these grown adults. Well, one morning I was outside a hotel and I was smoking. And right away, this lady came outside and immediately asked me, what did you do to lose your leg? Mind you, it is literally 6 o'clock in the morning. So I said to her, you haven't said good morning, hello, or even asked my name, and yet you somehow feel entitled to my medical history? Would you like that if that happened to you? Now, after I said that, she started cussing me out and said that I was a rude jerk. So am I the jerk for saying this and feeling this was way out of line? Because at this point, I seriously have simply had enough. No, you are not the jerk. This is absolutely uncalled for. And it's really crazy to me that adults really do act like this. Like, what is wrong with people? Why would you ask that of someone you don't even know, man? You can't just walk up to someone like that and be like, this is fine. I'm sure they're gonna be really happy about me asking this very personal question. This isn't a strange request at all. Like, come on, dude. That is so frustrating, it's not even funny. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. I think you could have been way harsher because this lady was completely out of line. Am I the jerk for telling my close friend that the vacation that she won is actually a straight up scam? Because right now she's pissed off at me and I really just don't know if I'm in the wrong. Here's what's happening. So I have a close personal friend that's been dealing with a lot over the last few months. I won't go into details, but let's just say if anyone deserves a vacation to the tropics, it's definitely her. A little over a month ago, she signed up for a drawing to win a free vacation to the Bahamas. We have been talking about doing something like that for our birthdays because her birthday is so close to mine. Well, she got a text message saying that she won yesterday and texted me all excited about it. But after she told me, I did some digging and I found out the vacation isn't really free. Like, the only free part is the room at the resort, and even then you're still on the hook for taxes and fees. Nothing is included. Not the airfare, no drinks and food. So I just flat out told her that it was a scam and they were most likely trying to get her to buy something like a timeshare. And now because I said this, she is pretty upset with me. So seriously, with all that in mind, am I the jerk for telling her and saying that, hey, this is a scam and you need to look out? Because she is super pissed off and I just don't know what to do. Okay, no, you're definitely not the jerk. If anything, you're a good friend because you told her straight up exactly what's going on. You could have easily sat in the background and been like, okay, whatever, this is not my problem. Have fun on your scam vacation and keep me out of it. But no, instead you spoke up and you said something and you were like, okay, this is a scam and you need to look out. And based on what you're describing, it seems like she has like a bad hand in life right now. So if anything, she's probably just like shooting the messenger instead of actually being mad at you. Like, I'm sure after like a week of sitting on it, she'll be able to be like, okay, yeah, it was a scam and I'm sorry for treating it that way. Like, I know that's how I would react if I did have this reaction initially, and I was excited about going to the Bahamas for like a vacation, especially one that I thought was gonna be free. So no, you're not the jerk, and honestly, I think you did the right thing. An entitled scalper screams at me after I kindly offered him money so that he could buy me Pokemon cards. But thankfully, a few weeks later, I got my petty revenge by going above and beyond just to ensure that this guy didn't get exactly what he was trying to buy. Here's how I did it. So a few weeks ago, a new Pokemon set released, and unfortunately, I was working when the vendor came. So a huge line forms and I offer the guy who was first in line some cash to grab something for me. And for reference, I work somewhere that sells Pokemon cards. Now, instead of just saying no to me, he instead shouts out, "No, I'm not grabbing anything for you." And he does this in front of like 20 people. Now, I don't know if he was trying to embarrass me or what his plan really was, but I was just like, oh, okay, and then I just moved on completely. Well, fast forward to yesterday, and I was able to be the first person in line for a restock, and guess who's behind me second in line? Because yes, you're right, it's that guy who shouted at me a few weeks ago. It's at this point he starts talking to me and apologizes for not grabbing me anything, and then says he was just trying to get this one item for his kid, which is like, yeah, right. He then makes a subtle hint at the thing that he wants to buy in hopes that I don't grab it instead. So the vendor stocks the stuff, and there's 4 of the item that this idiot wants. He's like, oh nice, there's 4 of them. So fast forward, and at this point it's been like an hour, and we're all standing there with a line behind us, waiting to be able to purchase these cards. But when the time eventually comes around to buy from the shelf, I decide to grab all 4 of the items that this guy wanted to get. And I did this literally so he wouldn't get anything. Now, I really need to clarify, I am not a scalper in any way, shape, or form, but I will say I am very petty. If you're gonna be a jerk to me a few weeks ago, and then give me some bogus apology, all in some weird attempt to try and play buddies with me, just so you can get whatever you want, trust me, it's only gonna end in you receiving absolutely nothing by the end of it. Okay, there is so much I could say about this subject matter because buying Pokemon cards nowadays is impossible. There are so many factors that pretty much led this community in this direction because people who act like this and try to act like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna grab anything for you, who are probably just scalpers without any kids that are just gonna sell this to anybody who's willing to buy it. Like, these people are the ones who are making this hobby impossible. And that truly is not fair. It's not fair across the board, man. So for me, this story is so satisfying because you know for a fact the guy standing behind the original poster 2 weeks later 100% was a scalper trying to get some item they can sell online or some other crap like that. So good for the original poster for getting back at them because their behavior absolutely came back to bite them in the butt. An entitled customer decides to get mouthy with me after they called into my company to try and get some technical support. So I decided to get some petty revenge by putting them right back in the call line, forcing them to wait for God knows how long until someone else would finally deal with them. Here's what happened. Okay, so I used to work for a major satellite provider. I really hated that job because they had the most toxic environment you can imagine. When I worked there, they had like a 60% turnover rate within the first year of employment. People would call me up and say just the dumbest crap ever, which made for great conversations at home. Occasionally, you would get the super entitled customers whose time you're definitely wasting, and they're just way too important to talk to the likes of you and me. But that's when I discovered a button on my computer screen that would put them right back in the call queue for God knows how long. So I answered the phones one day and I said, "Thank you for calling, I'm operator 123. How can I help you today?" This entitled customer then says to me, "Your crappy, idiotic service is out again. I'm tired of you guys constantly trying to charge me to fix my equipment, and I want answers right now." I responded back by saying, "Sure, I'd be happy to help out. Can you please tell me a little bit about your issue?" The entitled customer then says, "The TV won't play. The service is too expensive and I hate you for existing." So then I would respond and be like, "Okay, no problem. I'm super happy to help you with this issue. Let me just put you on the briefest of holds while I review your records." Then at that point, I would press the button. Crappy jazz music's playing, the company's saying that they're happy you're calling us and that their call is very important and that we will answer in the order received. But basically, the moral of the story is don't scream at the guy behind the phone simply because your stupid stuff isn't working or whatever. Because trust me, I don't care, and if you're gonna be mean to me, then I'm gonna press my screw you button and you're gonna be placed right back in line. But either way, I'm sure I pissed off a lot of people. But I'm also sure that I just don't care. I still giggle at what I imagine was their confusion and then super angry disgust when they ended up right back in the call queue. Because if you're going to mess around, you better be ready to find out. Oh man, I love that so much. I wish there was something like that when I worked at a call center because holy crap, you can get some of the weirdest customers on planet Earth, dude. Like, oh my god, that is so frustrating. I really wish I had something like that. That would have been so nice. So good for you for doing that. Honestly, I don't think I would feel any regret either because some customers are straight up crazy. And I think putting them back in line for their terrible attitude and their bad behavior really is a fantastic punishment, especially if they're going to be belligerent. My entitled coworker complained I didn't have more free clothing that she could pick from, as I was literally just trying to do a good deed for someone by helping them out and giving them clothing that they could actually use for work, resulting in one of the most annoying situations I've ever been in, as she literally decided to be the most entitled person on the entire planet, making me regret ever reaching out to her or even trying to be nice to her in the first place. Here's how it all went down. Okay, for a bit of context, I work in what's essentially a community mental health setting, and this is a place that has a focus on substance evidence mistreatment. As such, we get a lot of interns, most of whom are paid for their work, and we keep quite a few who pass muster, which honestly is a lot of them. And in fact, that's how I started last year. We have very little turnover, but a large amount of clients, so we tend to have room. But right now, we have an intern who is literally trying on everybody's patience. She leaves the break room a mess regularly. Dirty dishes on the table or in the sink, food and messiness on the table, empty wrappers left around, etc. She also failed her course last semester due to not fulfilling her hours, so now she has to repeat. But regardless, we all show grace because she does have a disability. I'm not sure what it is and I refuse to ask, but she did mention freely there's little pain and mostly just has difficulty with gross motor skills. But either way, we don't make any kind of judgment or assumption about her work ethic, and maybe she just had some bad days and just couldn't make it. But the messes that she would make though are hard to be patient with, because what's so hard about tossing wrappers on the way out of the kitchen? She literally has to walk past the can on her way out, and apparently it's the same way when she uses our common office spaces. Despite clear and easy access to garbage cans, she leaves her food and wrappers on tables and desks. We've tried politely mentioning it, but she makes some kind of excuse like, oh, I forgot, or she'll say that she'll just do it later. But honestly, it's like whatever. It's easier for us to handle it at this point because we don't know her struggle. But with all things considered, she's routinely complained about not being offered a job yet. I sympathized and asked if they had said a firm no yet, but she said no, but also that our supervisor was harsh about her notes. I then offered to help her out, to which she said yes, and when I took a look, holy crap, they were dreadful. She was copying and pasting notes from other clients, which then led to several errors, including the patient's diagnosis, their race, and genders. And that's a huge problem since we work in the mental health field, and insurance can already be a nightmare to deal with, even when we do our work right. I guided her through it, but she became frustrated and said it was way too confusing. The other coworkers in her department gave her guided outlines, and they did it in layman terms. But it's the same thing over and over again. She would say it was too hard and too confusing. And it's like, girl, how do you intend to do this as a full-time job for a government agency? Which, by the way, that's literally her goal. But again, we're trying to show grace. We don't know what it's like for her, so we're just trying to show repeated patience and guidance. And we literally are trying to treat her the way that we want to be treated. Well, that is until today. Now, for a bit of background about me, I am a thicker lady, but I wear nice clothing to the office. I've personally found some good sellers and decent manufacturers, usually at around like $50 as average price, or $20 or so on clearance, which is how I tend to snag some good deals. Now, this girl is closer to my size and asked me where I shopped, to which I then told her the various places and prices. But when I told her, she said, oh, that is way too expensive. And I just thought to myself, okay, that's fair. I definitely know the struggle, but also I might have a few items of clothing that I'm not wearing anymore and she could definitely have. So I told her this and she was ecstatic. And then fast forward and I eventually brought in multiple pieces, including some shirts, some dresses, and some cardigans. She took a few tops but then sneered at the dresses. I am not wearing those. The straps are too thin and they're gonna show my bra. So I responded back and I said, oh, that's no sweat. I'm the same way. To hide them, I wear shrugs and cardigans over them. It keeps me looking professional and they're pretty cheap online if you don't like the ones I brought. I could even show you if you want. I mean, they're like maybe $10 a pop. She then says to me, I don't have that kind of money. Don't you have matching ones you can give me instead? Well, I thought about it and I said, well, no, I'm using the ones I have. The ones I brought are the ones I don't need. She then looked at me and said, I'm sure you have another one you're not using. I've seen you wear a different white one. How about that one? You have two of those. So I responded by saying, well, they're different shades and they go with different dresses. I use both of them, so I'm sorry. But the one you're talking about was like $12. I mean, I can send you the link. Before I could even continue, she cuts me off and says, I already told you I'm broke. Can't you just give it to me? But I said to her, no, I'm sorry. She looked at me and said, okay, fine. Then take these back. I don't want them. And then she tosses the dresses haphazardly back in the bag. Meanwhile, she admits to ordering out for most of her meals, including a pretty expensive chain known for like their $12 desserts, which apparently is something she gets on a regular basis. Like, man, I don't know. Maybe you could buy your own sweater if you don't spend $30 on spaghetti and then $12 on cake every single week. Or at least be polite and grateful about when someone just hands you about $200 worth of free clothing that you could absolutely rock every day to work if you would spend like $10 on a sweater. I try to view it from her perspective, rationalize it through the lens of her different ability, but I don't think there's an excuse for being so entitled about the free clothing. But whatever, hopefully she enjoys the tops, because at least they're not going to be going to like Goodwill or anything like that for $50, and they will at least go to somebody who might end up wearing them. Okay, in my opinion, the whole saying of like, oh, beggars can't be choosers could not be more real here. Like, the original poster is throwing this lady a bone and she's trying to be like, oh, I'm sorry, this isn't exactly what I wanted. Like, dude, what are you doing? I'm giving giving you like $200 worth of clothing and you're really gonna be that picky? Like if I was in need of some extra clothing and I was like, oh crap, this is in my brand and in my size. Like for me personally, I'll be like, oh, thank you so much. This is so nice of you. I appreciate it so much and all this other stuff. I'm not gonna sit there and be like, I can't believe you didn't give me the exact thing that I wanted. You know that one item that you have at home that I've seen you wear a couple of times? You need to give me that one instead of this crap. But it's like, lady, do you not realize she's giving you this all for free? Like, what are you doing? So yeah, this intern is super annoying and I can see exactly why they haven't been hired on. An entitled Karen blocks my driveway with her SUV as she assumed that she could just park it there whenever she wanted to go pick up her kid from her school. But I was feeling petty and I got angry. So I blocked her car in with another one of my cars and I refused to move. Here's what happened. So I own a house a couple houses down from a school. So this was bound to happen eventually. When it's time for the kids to go home, my street is lined bumper to bumper with parents to pick up their kids. The sidewalks are full of families who walk all the way to their cars, and I often have to pick up balloons, snack packaging, old homework worksheets, and general garbage that the kids drop. If you're trying to get home around the time school lets out, there's no way you're going to be able to get out of there before the blockade the parents make is gone. Now this has been a problem for the few years that we have lived here. There's two places that the kids let out. My street, which is a small cul-de-sac with the school at the top, and a main road that's open all the way down to the baseball park, with a wider road to allow street parking and two-way driving. Obviously, if you can't find parking, then the tiny residential road is not the way to go. There are 3 cars at my home: my car, my roommate's car, and my husband's utility van, which he parks on the road to avoid blocking our roommate since she's frequently in and out. So today is Friday, and I work from home. So when I finish work, I poke my head out the window to look at my fruit tree that I have near my driveway. It is spring, and I keep excitedly looking for blooms, and that's when I notice a big white Buick SUV in the middle of my driveway, blocking both spots from my car, which my husband was using since I was home, and my roommate's spot. Honestly, why would you park in somebody's driveway? So on top of these entitled parents blocking up our small residential road, this person decided to take up a private residence's driveway. So I got on the phone with a non-emergency police line and took pictures of the vehicle and the plate. Then I got my husband's keys and backed his vehicle up to block the SUV into my driveway, and I just waited. 15 minutes later, an entitled mom with bug-eye sunglasses, big old diamonds on her jewelry, and wearing yoga pants and athletic wear comes around to hop in the driver's seat and smiles and waves at me sitting on my steps. Honestly, she probably thought I was the homeowner's kid or something, all because I'm in my early 20s, but in reality, I'm the homeowner. The entitled Karen looks at me and says, "Hi, hope you don't mind." So I look at her and I say, "Ma'am, you're trespassing. Why would you park in a private driveway?" But the entitled Karen just looks at me and gives a scoff. "Sorry, won't do it again. We were just leaving." She was being really dismissive and avoiding eye contact despite taking the sunglasses off. So I looked at her and I said, "I don't care. You have no right to park on my property, and right now I'm on the phone with the police." The entitled Karen then looks at me and says, "It was just for a second. I was just picking up my daughter." But I look at her and I say, "It doesn't matter. You don't live here, so you don't park here." At this point, I realize the non-emergency police aren't going to pick up, so I hang up and decide to mess with her a bit. She got in her SUV and dismissively waved at me, so I got in my vehicle that was blocking her in and waited, pretending to still be on the phone. She starts trying to back out of my driveway because there was a little bit of a gap between my utility van and my neighbor's car, but it was definitely too small for this Buick. I would like to point out that this vehicle has a scuffed front on the bumper, so I had a feeling she has no spatial awareness outside of her backup camera. Every time she backed up, I honked, still pretending to be on the phone. She tried again and I honked again. She looked at my grass and I was about to start recording her in case she tried to go through my front yard. I honked again after I saw that. If she kept trying to back out and hit my big utility van, she would certainly lose. She gets out of her SUV and comes up to my van, recognizing that she can't do anything without making it far worse for herself. Her face was visibly patchy from the distress, and she asked me again, "Are you really calling the police?" I looked at her and I said, "Yes, you're illegally parked on my private property, and that's illegal. I don't care if it's for 5 seconds, don't ever do it. You don't live here." Her kid got out of the car, and I decided that was enough. So I waited for her to get back in her SUV, and I parked my van back in its rightful spot, and I let her out of my driveway. After that, I called the school, and I gave them the license plate number of this entitled Karen. Nothing will probably come of it, but I don't think she'll ever park in someone's driveway again anytime soon. And sure, I'll take the jerk point points because there was a child involved, but you shouldn't put your child in this kind of situation in the first place. What a weird entitled Karen. Seriously, you don't park in other people's driveways. Like, that is literally a one-stop shop to get your car towed away. It is simply not worth it, and it just shows your entitlement when you do that. I know if I was in the original poster's shoes, I absolutely would have called a tow truck. I mean, this person is parked on your property illegally, and you did not request or allow them to park their car there, so you very easily could have towed it. But good for you for at least putting this entitled Karen in her place, because I can bet after that ordeal, she probably will never park her car in anybody's driveway ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My entitled supervisor demands that I only do what's on my job title, and as a result, I'm unable to fix the payroll system, so nobody gets paid for several weeks. Here's what happens. So I work for a construction company as an inventory admin. My job is basically to schedule counts of our warehouse and input the numbers they give me for inventory. I then try to see what the problem is when the numbers on the last count and current count don't add up. There is a little bit more to it, but that's basically what I do. Now, the problem with this job is that when you have been doing it long enough and you are really good at it, there is less work to do all around. In the beginning, when counting one rack out of the 60 racks of material would take a few days, it was fine because I was always busy. But now that everything is in order, the entire warehouse can be counted in like 3 days. And unfortunately, this leaves me bored for most of the time. So to fix this, I studied up on our cloud-based ERP service that we use for all our internal and external transactions, and have become sort of an expert at it. Every single aspect of this company uses this ERP service to do their job. From timesheets to HR, payroll, accounting, scheduling, management, manufacturing, ordering from vendors, delivering, inventory, and then some. All of it runs through this service. So it is very important that this service is up and running 24/7. I became so proficient to this service that our vice president decided to cut ties with our consultants of the ERP because I could do what they did, but better, quicker, and much cheaper. For reference, we were paying these consultants $5,000 a month just to be on standby if we needed them for some sort of trouble that could arise just from using the ERP, and we had to dish out even more money to fix those problems, depending on how many hours was spent of their time just trying to fix said problem. I'm not sure on their exact rate, but it was something like $200 an hour, and they took weeks to fix anything, while I could fix the problem in time for my daily afternoon break. I never got an official job title or raise of any kind for being an expert on this service. The company just saw me being able to do it and let me fix things that happened, so they no longer needed the outside help. I wasn't too upset because it gave me something to do, so I was glad to help the company save some money, even if none of that money fell my way. Skip ahead a few months, and we now have a new warehouse manager, and someone in the warehouse messes up something with the inventory by sending a bunch of materials in the wrong job with no records of it ever being shipped. And we're talking like this is a $500,000 mess up here. This is a serious problem. In the same day, our ERP had an update that caused a bunch of bugs with our accounting department. So I decided to work on the ERP problem first because the warehouse mess up is more of a delay mess up and not actually stopping anybody from doing their job at the moment, while this accounting problem means our bills are not going to be able to be paid. I mean, you can only imagine what kind of issues we will run into if the bills are not being paid. The ERP bugs turn out to be quite big, as well as numerous, so it ends up taking me a couple of days to figure it out, but I fixed it before any bills are actually due, and decided to take lunch a little early to celebrate a victory. There was thankfully a crisis averted. The new warehouse manager storms into my office after I get back from lunch, and he is livid. Apparently, the bosses were pinning the blame on him for the warehouse mess up, and considering he is the one who oversees shipments and the personnel in the warehouse, the blame is rightfully placed. He starts laying into me, asking why I have not fixed the problem yet, yelling and screaming like a child. I tried explaining that I was fixing an ERP issue and have not had time to look at the warehouse problem yet. He gets even more angry and notes that it is funny how I have more time to take early lunches, but not enough time to do my job. That started to really upset me, but I held my tongue and kept calm about the situation. He then ordered me to only do what is in my job title and to leave the ERP garbage to people competent enough to handle it, as he put it. Since this guy was technically my supervisor, I had no choice but to obey. I asked him to send me that in writing, and he snarks and storms back into his office. 5 minutes later, I get an email stating that under no circumstances am I to work on anything related to ERP unless it involves inventory. And so after his attitude and his temper tantrum, tantrum, I decide I'm going to maliciously comply. So I do nothing but inventory from that point forward, knowing full and well that we would essentially be coasting until we hit a problem that I would then refuse to fix. Sure enough, not even a week later, I get an email from HR that some sort of bug in the ERP system was preventing them from accessing payroll to pay employees this week. I reply an apology that I am no longer able to work on the ERP bugs due to my supervisor. I then refer them to the ERP system help guide for further assistance. Now, I knew the help guide was not going to help her in the slightest, but it was no longer my problem, so I was not going to deal with it in the slightest. Skip a few days later to Friday, and I check my bank account in the morning before getting up for work, and I laugh because there was no money deposited. The problem in question never got fixed. I hurry up and I get ready for work, excited to see the chaos unfold, and what I was expecting was an understatement. When I show up to work, I see the entire warehouse staff of 50 people completely walking out the front door. I stopped one and I asked why they were leaving, and they replied to me by saying, "I didn't get paid today, so I am not coming back until I do." I go into the office and I see the warehouse manager in a panic. He has jobs that need material and nobody to load into the trucks or deliver them. I ask him if he needs help with anything, and he just screams at me to leave his office because he is getting phone calls from all kinds of superintendents of all these different jobs asking why their material has not arrived yet. I pass by HR on the way to my office, and I see a bunch of bosses huddled up with her over her computer, with her having an angry and confused expression on her face, as well as everybody else. They were clearly trying to figure out the problem. I felt bad for her because it really was something out of her control, but I knew she would ultimately be okay because she had been there for so long that they would never fire her. When I get to my office, I see the vice president waiting for me there. He has a very upset look on his face. When we get inside, he demands to know why I did not fix the problem in HR when she emailed me about it. So I replied the statement I was waiting to say. I said to them, I am no longer allowed to work on ERP problems as it is not in my job title. He then had the most shocked look on his face and asked why all of a sudden I had a change of heart. I then show him the email from my warehouse manager, and I could see the dots connecting in his head. He immediately storms out, and I see him heading straight to the warehouse manager's office. They were in there for a few hours, but eventually he comes back to my office. He seems a lot calmer now and asks me politely if I can fix the problem in HR and if I can resume fixing the ERP if needed. At this point, I liked the relief of responsibility and told him I would only do it if he put it officially in my job title along with a raise. His calmness turned to anger again, and he looks at me and says, "I cannot believe you," as he storms out and returns to his office. A few hours later, he sends out a mass email that he has hired the old ERP consultants to fix the problem, and that next week, everyone would be paid for the money they are owed, along with the money they earned if they return to work. Now, this one surprised me, as he would rather pay over $60,000 a year to consultants than give me a few extra bucks an hour for better work. I think he expected me to change my mind and just do it for my own paycheck, but I decided to wait because I knew how these consultants were, and if they even managed to fix this problem in a week, it would be an absolute miracle. Most of the warehouse staff agreed to return, but were still upset about not getting paid. Sure enough, next Friday comes around and nobody gets paid again. At this point, it is becoming a real problem, and the entire staff is becoming agitated. They have bills to pay. I even heard a bunch of the warehouse talking about some competitors nearby that they could get work for. And at this point, I even considered just fixing the problem because the warehouse didn't deserve to be treated like that due to the poor management of everybody else around them. Maybe I am the jerk here for this, but I am severely underpaid and can barely afford my apartment. There is no reason I should do extra work for free. That same day, the vice president returns to my office and hands me papers. These papers said that I would be promoted to a newly created position that dealt with the inventory as well as ERP upkeep. It would be its own department, and he would be my direct supervisor, and it also came with a hefty raise. And all I had to do was sign the paper and agree. I looked up at him after reading the paper, and he had the saddest look on his face. "Please, just sign it. The consultant said that it would take them weeks to get around to fixing it due to the high volume of clients, and we cannot keep skipping paychecks." So I happily signed it and immediately got to work on the HR issue. And guess what? I managed to fix it in the same day, because at the end of the day, it was just an update issue. And if my original supervisor had just let me help out, then we all could have avoided this mess in the first place. What a crazy story. You literally had them by the throat, and they were not going to be able to get anything done unless you fixed it. Like, you literally almost took down an entire business. That is so awesome in my opinion. And I honestly don't have any sympathy for management, like in the slightest. They would rather bring in these stupid consultants who absolutely would have taken like 2 months just to fix it, rather than pay the guy extra who can do it within a day. I mean, talk about doing things the hard way. And it's really disgusting that they really wanted to try and cut corners this way and have it so this guy would not only do his inventory job, but also fix this system pretty much for free. Like, that is messed up and that's not fair in the slightest. So hopefully the next time this company tries to cut corners, they don't try to cut around the one person who could probably save their skin. My entitled boss demands that I work during my planned vacation, so I decide to maliciously comply and I end up getting him fired as a result. Here's what happened. So I've been working at this company for about 3 years. I had been consistently growing in my role and was eventually given a project to own, with 1 to 2 other team members if needed. But it was a major project with a quick turnaround. I determined I could do it myself, though it would be tight, and since I was hoping for a promotion, I took on the project solo. I was able to deliver the project slightly ahead of schedule and with better quality than expected, which allowed us to make a huge sale. The head of the company gave me an award at an all-hands-on-deck meeting for the work I did, and my boss let me know I was on track for an end-of-the-year promotion with a nice pay raise and more responsibilities. But I was needed in another part of the business, so I was going to have to transfer under a new manager that was notoriously hard to work with. I transferred to this manager, and the first meeting we had to get on the same page, I brought up that I had a 3-week planned vacation in 4 months. I had never taken vacation, so I had 6 weeks saved up and did not want to start losing it. He told me of course that would be fine, and we would be able to make it work. About a week later, we have our first meeting with our product team. They had a new large project idea and wanted it to be released in just 3 months. As my team looked over the details, we knew this was a 6 to 8 month project at best, and it would be better to deliver in small increments so they still had something to show in 3 months, or we would need to push out the schedule. My boss was adamantly against both, so throughout the next week, he made us have last-minute 3 to 4 hour brainstorming sessions every day, but he would not tell us until about 3 o'clock in the evening, forcing us all to work late every day that week. At the end of the week, there was no way we could figure out to deliver everything on the shorter timeline, and so my boss asked me to stay behind after the meeting for another hour. He railed against me, saying I was failing at this project and that he could not see me getting a good annual review in 4 months, and that a promotion wasn't even on the table. This annual review would also include the project I had just received an award for, and is supposed to encompass 12 months of work. But he was basing this off of the first 2 weeks on this new team, which really was not fair. At this point, I knew he was ready to use me as a scapegoat for his bad management, and I started applying elsewhere. We continued working on the project, and sure enough, at the end of 3 months, we were still far from being able to deliver, and my boss was getting heat from above. Right around this time, I received an offer from another company that would be the promotion that I wanted and an even larger pay increase. I accepted the offer and negotiated my start date to be right after my vacation, which is now 3 weeks away. That same day, my boss calls me into his office and tells me that we need to talk about this vacation. I reminded him that we had already talked about it months before and that everything is booked, flights, hotels, everything. But he would not let up and told me there's no way I could take 3 weeks off with how behind schedule we already were. He told me I could go on my trip, but I could not take vacation and would be expected to be online during our business hours throughout the trip, which would be about 4 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the evening, local time at my vacation spot. So I decided to maliciously comply. Every morning while on vacation, I would log on at 4 o'clock in the morning, check my emails, answer questions on our internet chat, and do the minimum work expected, logging off as soon as it hit 1 o'clock p.m., all without burning any vacation time. With 1 week left in vacation, I requested a conference call with my boss to give him my 2 weeks notice. He was shocked and tried everything to get me to stay and finish out the project, including bringing back up the possibility of a promotion. I told him I had already accepted a job with a start date upcoming, and I worked my last 2 weeks before moving on to my new job. Now this is where it gets fun. Because my boss required me not to take vacation, the company had to pay out all of my accrued vacation once I left, a little less than 7 weeks at this point, including the 3 weeks I had originally planned to take. Now short-staffed, I heard from other coworkers that the project missed 2 more adjusted deadlines, and eventually the manager was demoted before being let go from the company. About 6 months later, the head of the first company asked me to lunch to offer me a role of taking over my former boss's old position. I negotiated an even higher pay increase, as well as company equity, and ended up going back there for 3 more years. So at the end of the day, I couldn't be happier that I came out on top. That manager that you had to deal with was absolutely obnoxious, and in my opinion, completely out of line. Like, what a betrayal of trust. They say to you when you first come in, oh, that's okay, you can have your vacation in a few months, that's no big deal. Only to then, right when the vacation's coming back up, to basically stab you in the back. Like, that is literally what happened. They decided at the last second that no, you can't go on your vacation. And if you do, you gotta work and get stuff done. And at 4 in the morning at that. I don't know if anyone's tried to work at 4 in the morning, especially if you don't do any kind of night shift stuff, but let me tell you, it is miserable. Like, if I was in your shoes, that would be the last time I would want to do any work. That boss is so disrespectful to do that, and it's so good to see that they got let go, because they were not a good manager in the slightest. They were trying to use you as a scapegoat and basically have you as a cop-out for when things go south, and you literally just won an award in the company. I mean, it's so unfair to go from such a high point of your career to then basically being on the chopping block of almost getting fired. That's not fair in the slightest, and honestly, you did not deserve that treatment. But as karma would have it, it's so cool that you came back, not only with a higher pay, but also with company equity. And I'm honestly happy to see that things worked out for you in the end, while also delivering karma to your awful boss who treated you so poorly. My ex-stepmother demands to show up to my exclusive party, despite the fact that I did not invite her on purpose after the awful things she did to me and my family all throughout my childhood. And I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I moved far, far away from my birth country and have moved away for almost 13 years now. Part of my reason for leaving was to add physical distance between myself and my ex-stepmother. Now, she is a beautiful woman, but that is her only attribute. She raised me in her own faulty way. By age 12, I was responsible for the entirety of the housework. Not just chores, but all of it. Bathrooms once a week, kitchen twice a day, laundry, cleaning skirting boards, polishing the wood tables, and taking care of glassware. If it wasn't completely to her satisfaction, I had to do it again, and wasn't allowed out to play for the rest of the week. Every day was a list of jobs in the kitchen that would take several hours after school. She, meanwhile, did not work. I would get up, make myself breakfast, then bring her breakfast in her room, and give her a foot massage while she ate it. Now, I'm not here to write the litany of reasons why this is awful. However, for clear understanding for the readers of the toxic level of parenting I had to put up with on a daily basis. She even spent quality time with my 18-year-old boyfriend, if you know what I mean. So basically, long story short, she's incredibly toxic, and I have worked hard on my mental health and my boundaries, as has my older sister. She had the misfortune of being in the same country and thus being more exposed to this situation. Also, my ex-stepmother was, until he was an adult, our only access to our younger brother. Fast forward to after the coronavirus and all that jazz, my siblings and I organized to catch up in our home country. We are all spread apart location-wise, and have 2 children, excluding the younger brother. He's in his early 20s, and we are all in our late 30s and early 40s. So we thought we would organize a big, huge party just for us. We all know each other's friends, and then there's all those other important people that played formative roles in our lives. And by doing this party, it would save us a bunch of time in catching up with old friends instead of going to everybody's places 2 hours at a time. This way, everybody could be here all at once. And then it's only the ones that can't come that we can then make the sacrifice to go and see them. Now, currently, the confirmed attendees of the venue is at 74 people, but there will be kids and partners, etc. So it's probably going to be realistically over 100 people. Word of this party reached my ex-stepmother. After not having heard from her, without exaggeration, in 5 years when she complained that she wasn't invited to my wedding, she messaged me on Facebook to say that she needs to talk. So I think to myself, oh no, this must be about my brother. So I Facebook call her to try and sort this out. She tells me that she's heard that I'm in the country soon, and she wants to come to my party. And since we were on a video call, she prefaced this by laughing when she answered and saying to me, "It's so funny, isn't it, that I look younger than you?" Ladies and gentlemen, it was midnight. I have a toddler and a 6-year-old, and I work 40 hours a week. I also have a husband that thinks I'm beautiful, regardless of anything, even though he always has a super cheesy smile when we get dressed nicely for our dates. And honestly, I was expecting bad news about my brother from the way she messaged me on Facebook. It honestly seemed like something serious happened. But no, she just wants to come to my party. So I said on the call, "Listen, I love you, but I don't want to see you." To which she said she needed to go. And that's fine. I felt happy with my response, and I told my sister, who I know had gone no contact with her when she was pregnant with her second child. 2 days later, she starts the same type of messaging to my sister. She tells me she can't emotionally do it. She had a newborn child, and she does not want to deal with the passive-aggressive conversations. My sister is an absolute legend. She has advocated for me my entire life. I don't need it these days, but if I could do for her what she did for me when I was younger, I was going to pull up my bootstraps and absolutely do it. And that's exactly what I did. I wrote a very calm, clear message explaining that she needed to remove her relationship with her ex-husband's children from her relationship with their child. I said that our brother is someone we want to have a relationship with, as he is our brother. I said she does not get the same treatment, as she has to acknowledge the issues and the damage that she caused as the adult in our formative years, and then very bluntly said that I will protect my family by not allowing contact with her, and that if she does not respect that boundary and attends the party, I will not hesitate to loudly explain to the attendees a very large list of reasons that she is not welcome, starting with her trying to tell people that all of my dad's kids are not his, and her son is the only legitimate heir. So with all things considered, I really hope she doesn't come to this party, because nobody wants to see her or ever have to deal with her. Your ex-stepmother sounds awful. I mean, she seriously messed around with your former boyfriend when you were younger and was just all around an awful human being pretty much the entirety of your childhood. And that's not fair in the slightest. So with all things considered, I don't blame you in the slightest for saying, you know what? I don't want you in my life. You are not beholden to this person in the slightest. They were not a good parental figure in your life, and they actively treated you like garbage. So good for you for setting boundaries and putting your foot down, because from the sounds of it, this ex-stepmother definitely does not seem like a good person. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My entitled coworker is a know-it-all and is constantly bossing me and my coworkers around just to try and get us to do things that are clearly against the rules. And I'm honestly fed up and I don't know what to do. So I had a coworker named Mike, who most of the time was a nice guy, but had a tendency to get a really bad know-it-all attitude that would drive everybody up a wall. He seems to think because he worked on ships and steel foundries for a total of 40 years, his judgment is the best and only judgment that we should follow. He seems to think that he is qualified for everything. So with that in mind, where I worked, which was a lumber yard, I held one of the highest driver's license. So I drove the large trucks that had air brakes. One day I had to do an inspection on the brakes to make sure they were still compliant with the laws where I live. It's a simple task where you measure a push rod when the brakes are applied. When Mike saw what I was doing, he told me I should stop because I'm not qualified to work on those types of brakes. I told him that I was aware of that and that I am not doing any maintenance on the brakes. I'm just inspecting them to make sure they are compliant with the law. And if they aren't, I'm going to send the truck to be fixed by someone who is qualified. He then says to me, "But that doesn't make any sense. You never received any kind of training on that. You are not qualified." So I replied to him by saying that I took the course and I was trained in this matter specifically. This is what the instructors, who are government officials, said I have to do. But of course, he just kept arguing, saying how it doesn't make any sense and that I shouldn't be doing anything with the brakes. But I just kept working, ignoring what he said. And keep in mind, he doesn't have my type of license. He never took the course himself, so he literally doesn't know what he's talking about. Another instance involved my boss, who owned a few locations. So on occasion, I'd have to take my truck to the other location to get some stock for our location. There was another guy who I worked with who was able to do deliveries, but for some reason, Mike leaves it all for me to do. And this day, I was making several trips to my boss's other location, all so I could get the stock. I was on my way back at around 12:30, and I still had to go back to the other location later to get more stock, so I was planning on having my lunch break as soon as I was back. Meanwhile, people in the store where I worked told Mike to make sure I had my lunch break as soon as I was back as well. So everyone really was in the know. So I arrive, I unstrap my load, and Mike comes up with a forklift. He says to me, "I have a delivery loaded on the other truck. While I unload this, you can go do the delivery." I told him I haven't eaten yet, so I'm gonna go have lunch first. In a rather snarky tone, he goes to me and says, "What? You mean to tell me that you didn't eat while on the run?" I said to him, "No, because my lunch today requires a microwave." He replies to me by saying that it's my fault and that I should be bringing a lunch that is better prepared. So I just took my lunch, especially since I was entitled to it, and if he was going to argue, I would have pointed out whether I had my lunch on the the road or here, I was still allowed to take 30 minutes. So the other driver did the delivery while I ate. Another thing Mike likes to do is to follow the labor laws, which is good, but he seems to only want to follow them as long as it doesn't make his job harder, while also ensuring that he wouldn't be the one getting in trouble if they are violated. We had a worker around 19 or 20 years old. He had his driver's license, and Mike wanted him to do the deliveries. So a store worker named Stacy consulted the bosses to see if they'd allow it. They informed Stacy that their insurance company won't cover someone under 24 to drive any company vehicles. Stacy told this to Mike, and Mike apparently was arguing with Stacy for a little bit, saying how the worker is capable and he has a driver's license, so he should be doing the deliveries. But Stacy argued back that she's just relaying what the boss told her, stating that it's not covered under insurance, so therefore he can't drive any of the vehicles because it's illegal. I think a few times Mike tried having the worker go on deliveries, but the worker refused, saying if he's not insured, he's not driving. Another instance of Mike's entitlement involved a shed that we had at the place that we primarily work in. The one side is lined with bins filled with lumber, and this is a place where we grab from if a customer needs a couple of pieces, with the larger quantities still sitting outside. Mike wanted the bins that were close to empty filled, but told us not to fill them until we empty the bins of the lumber before bringing in the new lumber. So naturally, when we had a customer, we would grab out of those bins, just trying to deplete it like Mike required. But every time, Mike would stop us and say, "No, don't grab any lumber from in here. Give them the lumber all outside." So after several days of attempting to empty the bins, with Mike constantly telling us to grab from outside, we just gave up trying and just grabbed lumber from outside only. And wouldn't you know it, after about a week, Mike noticed the bins still near empty, with the old lumber still in there. He got mad, saying how it shouldn't take over a week to empty the bins and put newer stuff in stock. My driver at the time, named Al, had had enough. He said to Mike, "All right then, Mike, how do you want us to do this then? You don't want these bins filled until all the old stock is gone, yet you don't want us grabbing anything from in here and keep telling us to grab from outside only. You can't have it both ways." Mike then replies, "Oh, I didn't think of that." So honestly, with all things considered, my coworker is absolutely obnoxious, and I really don't enjoy working with them. Yeah, Mike sounds really stupid in this story, I'm just gonna say it. It seems like they really don't know what they want, and they're one of those busybodies that because they have so much experience, they're under the assumption that they just know better than everybody else. And that's simply obviously not the case. So hopefully when working with Mike, you find some kind of way of getting him away from you, because someone that annoying can really be frustrating. And hopefully for the sake of your job, you don't have to deal with him super often. My boyfriend's entitled mom is telling her friends that I do haircuts for free, despite the fact that I only do free haircuts outside of work and on occasion to selective family members. And I'm so frustrated by her entitlement, and I seriously don't know what to do. So for the sake of the story, I'll be calling my boyfriend Nathan. That's not his real name, it's a fake one. So I've been dating my boyfriend for a year and a half. Things have been really good, and he is my best friend. I also get along really well with his family, as he does with mine. I go to cosmetology school currently, and I hope to become a hairstylist in the future. I've done my family's hair, as well as my boyfriend's family, for free when I am free. For example, I did my boyfriend's little sister's hair for her junior prom, and have done his mom's twice for weddings. I don't charge them because I'm not on the clock, and because I don't want to accept their money when I offered to help them in the first place. On Saturday, I had a woman come into my school and my salon and ask for me to do her hair. For some info, students at my school are allowed to do people's hair, and people can come into the salon to get their hair done by these students. The prices are a lot lower. Think instead of a $50 treatment, it would only be about $14. But obviously, we're newer students, so you're not going to be with someone who's super experienced. We do get a lot of customers. Most of my friends come in, and sometimes even my boyfriend. So anyways, the lady comes in and asks for me specifically. I wasn't working on anyone, so I gladly helped her out. We ended up doing a full scalp treatment, plus a cut and a blowout plus styling. For salons in my area, this would have easily been anywhere between $60 to $80. But at the place I work at, this was more like only $20. When she was all finished, I brought her to the front and gave her the total. She looked at me and said, "Aren't you Nathan's girlfriend?" And I didn't know who this woman was, but I said, "Oh, yes, I am." She then mentioned that Nathan's mom had said that I worked here and that I don't charge for family members. This lady then looks at me and says, "I didn't bring any money." Again, I have no idea who this woman is, and I have never said anything close to that. I told her that I'm currently a student and I do work here, but our school and company does charge. She was like, "No, I just spoke with her, and she says you do family and friends hair for free. So I responded by saying that while I have done some family's hair, as well as my boyfriend's family's hair for free, I have done it at theirs or my house, where I would then be off the clock. No matter what I told her, she would not listen, and my teacher and salon owner had to come forward and help the lady. She basically told my manager that I said I have a family discount, and now I'm making her pay even though I told her she didn't have to. Thankfully, my manager heard our entire conversation before she came over and basically told her that's not true. The woman did have money and threw a $20 bill on the counter before she walked out. I apologized to my teacher, but she told me not to worry. About an hour later, my boyfriend's mom showed up. I was working the counter at this time, so I was free to talk to her. I was about to tell her about the woman from earlier, but she kind of started talking right away. She said, "My friend just told me what happened and I'm not sure what to tell her." I told her I wasn't sure what she meant, and I told her what happened. Apparently though, she knew what happened and everything that lady told me was true. To summarize, my boyfriend's mom was talking to her friend, which was the lady from earlier, about where to get their hair done. She told her friend about me and how I do hair at a salon for a cheap price. She then told her friend to tell me that she knows my boyfriend's family and that I wouldn't charge her. I said to her that I have no control over prices and that I have never done work for free. She told me that I do her and her daughter's hair all the time for free and that she assumed I'd be nice enough to lend a hand to other people that they were close with. I told her I don't know why she would assume that, as this is my job and I'm still in school. I also told her that the times I've done her and her daughter's hair, I've done it at their houses when I wasn't currently at school. She ended the conversation by saying that I'm just a student and she doesn't understand why I would still need to get paid when I still have a lot to work on. She said to me, "Nathan says a lot of sweet things about you, and I was really looking forward to other people meeting you. I now have to go around telling my friends that you are actually sweet and we do actually like you, but it's fine, I guess. I'll see you soon." And then she just straight up left. The entire time she was very passive aggressive and very fake nice and fake understanding. I'm honestly at a loss for words right now. Throughout my entire time dating Nathan, I have never once gotten the impression that she didn't like me, and she's never acted like this to me before ever. I'm supposed to have dinner with him and his family on Wednesday, but I'm not really sure I want to anymore. I don't really want to see her, and I feel really awkward and uncomfortable. Nathan has been at a tournament all weekend, so I haven't gotten the chance to tell him what happened. I don't know how to tell him or how he's going to react. What should I do? Your boyfriend's mom is absolutely unbelievably entitled. Like, she literally sent her friend over to your place of business just to try and get a free haircut. Like, that is not okay. So I really think having some kind of conversation moving forward would probably be really good for you as well as your boyfriend, because she is way out of line. There's no good excuse for this type of action, and there's no good excuse for her to be like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. She'll do your hair for free." Like, what, is this a charity suddenly or something? I think with the help of your boyfriend, and depending on how he reacts to the situation, I think it's time to set some very clear boundaries, because this lady tried to cheat you out of work, and that's not fair for you in the slightest. So hopefully this conversation goes well, because your boyfriend's mom sounds like an absolute Karen, and hopefully by setting up expectations now, she can understand exactly where you stand, and she can know to never do that ever again. An entitled man gets evicted from our hotel after screaming and crying about his reservation, and I'm honestly blown away by his entitlement. Here's what happened. So we will call this guy Steven. That's not his real name. I personally handled Steven's check-in. Nothing out of the ordinary, but I thought he was a bit forceful and intimidating when he spoke to me. As I was checking him in, he asked about a late checkout at around 1:00 p.m. I told him that we could accommodate that, but per our policy, we'd have to pay for half a day. Now, he had booked a prepaid non-refundable reservation through a third party, and as such, I'd have to make a new reservation just to change for his late checkout. And honestly, third parties suck. I explained why a new reservation would be necessary if he wanted a 1 p.m. checkout, and thankfully he was super understanding and polite about it, and thanked me for my help. I noted the 1 p.m. checkout in 3 different places. I wrote it in the recap email, which goes to both my manager and the front desk agent coming in, so we can all stay up to date on what's going on, as well as in the notes within his reservation, while also putting it in housekeeping's notes so they would know that he'd be there until 1 o'clock. He then asked me for a corkscrew that night. It's not a strange request, and I actually bought a corkscrew for the hotel because they only had a bottle opener, so I gave it to him to use, and he never returned it. Well, fast forward to the next afternoon, and he storms into the lobby after getting a courtesy call from the front desk at around 1:30 p.m. regarding his late checkout and how payment would be for a full night if he didn't check out by 2 o'clock p.m. Steven was reeking of alcohol and starts yelling at the front desk. He said that I told him that he could stay until 8 o'clock p.m. for half day's price. My coworker immediately said, no, I'm certain she didn't say that. He tried insisting, before then saying that the guy who did the night audit also told him that he could stay until 8 o'clock p.m. And then he said that the manager told him it was okay over the phone. My coworker, though, held steady and did not humor any of his lies. And when someone won't believe your lies, what's left for a grown man to do but to start screeching and start making veiled threats? And that's exactly what Steven did. He insulted my coworker, sat down at the high top table in the lobby, and just stared at her maliciously, and then got back up to scream some more. He demanded to see the manager, so my coworker called her, and she said that she'd be at the hotel as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Steven is foaming at the mouth and calling the front desk an absolute jerk, and saying that she would get exactly what's coming to her. He was screaming, throwing insults, and saying all this stuff. She did ask him to leave, but he refused, and then she told him to leave once again, and he still refused. He then said, "If you try to throw me out of here, I'm gonna call the cops." My coworker then said, "You know what? That's a good idea. Let's call the cops." And so that's exactly what she did. My manager then arrived and told this guy he needed to get his stuff and get out. And of course, he refused and wanted a full refund. But you know what? He's not getting that. The police finally get there, and he slipped out the side door to try and get in his car. The police stopped him and told him he couldn't drive while he was drunk. They told him that someone would need to drive for him, and Steven would just have to come back and get his car when he was sober. They told him that he would be arrested if he came back inside and started any more garbage. So Steven left, and I really wish that this had been the end of it. But apparently, while he was pouting, while we were waiting for the police to get there, he made another prepaid non-refundable reservation through a third-party site, most likely as an attempt to prevent us from throwing him out. Well, later that night, I got a call from a third-party customer service rep saying that she had a client on the phone who says he was forced to leave the hotel for no reason and was denied any kind of refund. She asked if I could explain, and I did. I told her that he'd been removed by the police after drunkenly threatening the staff. And this lady really asked me why he felt the need to threaten us, as if there's any valid reason to threaten the front desk. So I told her, and she says, "Well, can you at least cancel and refund his reservation for tonight?" I said to her, "No, I'm not authorized to cancel any prepaid non-refundable reservations." What part of non-refundable did she not understand? So she said to me, "So you're refusing to give my client a refund?" So I respond by saying, "No, ma'am. I'm saying that I can't cancel a third-party reservation." She then completely ignores me and goes on to say, "I'll tell my client then that you're refusing a refund. Can I have your name for the record?" Imagine the sheer audacity it takes to not only make veiled threats about being evicted by the police, but to then go crying to your third party asking for a refund because he was apparently unfairly denied a room. No, Steven, you can't stay until 8 o'clock without paying for it. Seems like a logical conclusion to make, but with people like Steven, logic doesn't seem to enter the equation. Yeah, Steven sounds like a big crybaby. Like he literally lied to everybody about everything. Not only the people at the front desk, but also the third-party agent who's clearly stuck in the middle while also having some axe to grind for themselves. I mean, what is wrong with people? So hopefully the next time Steven goes to some kind of hotel, he doesn't act like a complete fool, because otherwise he'll probably just get evicted again. My entitled coworker gets arrested right in front of me at work after he tries to one-up a cop in a stupid argument, resulting in the cop finding out about my coworker's warrant for their arrest. And I've never been more satisfied to watch someone's downfall. Here's what happened. So first and foremost, the names have been changed to protect the innocent and the very, very stupid. So many moons ago, I worked at a now defunct convenience store as well as a gas station in the Midwest. I was initially a bit hesitant to take the job at the convenience store because it was just the sort of place that you always hear about getting robbed in some way, shape, or form. However, it was new, brightly lit, and clean, and it was on a very busy road. Also, I needed a second job pronto because going to university is expensive, and a girl's gotta eat. Ramen and peanut butter only go so far. After I started working there, I quickly realized that my worries about being robbed were probably unfounded, as my store was somehow the meeting point for all the police. The local city cops, the county sheriff, and even detectives all wandered into my store multiple times a day. They would stand around and chat with the staff, or just stop in for a snack or drink on the way to work, and this will be important later. So while I didn't have to worry about robbers, I actually kind of enjoyed my job. But with all things considered, there was one major annoyance. I got along well with all of the employees but one, and his name is Branson. Branson was in his early 20s, fairly well spoken and intelligent, but wouldn't you know it, he was one of those people that absolutely knew everything. And since he knew everything, it was obvious that the Lord Almighty had put him on this earth to tell everybody else about everything. No matter what you were talking about, he knew more and better than you, even on matters involving your own history. Now, you wouldn't think that was possible, but by God, he had an opinion about the cafeteria in the hospital my mom worked in when I was a child, which really blew my mind. While he wasn't the first know-it-all that I had met, he had an even more annoying personality trait. Branson was a tattletale. You didn't stock the coolers before he got there, he's gonna tattle on you. Didn't clean the bathrooms before he came in, he's gonna tattle on that as well. If you didn't make more coffee or anything like that, no matter how minor or downright wrong he was, he just had to run and tell management. As such, they were just as annoyed by him as the lowly cashiers. Once he almost got me fired by telling the managers that I allowed one of my friends to steal from the store. Luckily, we were absolutely lousy with cameras, so after a few minutes of desperate pleadings for the manager to check the CCTV footage, they discovered that Branson was in fact absolutely full of it, if not lying for his own amusement. When it was proved he was wrong, did he apologize? Well, of course not. He was never wrong in all of his livelong days, because he, of course, knows everything. I was, as they say, not remotely fond of Branson. One day the store was filled with law enforcement as per usual, 2 sheriffs and 4 or 5 local city cops. It was a shift change, and my coworker and I were ready to hand off our shift to Branson. There were no other customers, so we were all just standing around talking and just enjoying a brief bit of banter. It just so happened that the sheriff's supervisor was there, and his name was Bucky. Now, Bucky was a good old boy, a salt of the earth kind of person, and one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. He'd give you the shirt off of his back if he thought you'd look a bit chilly. Now, while I was chatting with some of the boys in blue, Bucky was talking to Branson. I wasn't entirely listening to their conversation until it started to go a little bit pear-shaped. Bucky was talking about something, and Branson, in his usual way, just had to start arguing with him that he was wrong, because Branson just knew that it was X instead of Y. Then he took it a step further and suggested that as a lawman, Bucky didn't have the schooling that Branson did, and it was only natural that Branson would know more about the subject. Bucky just smiled, and rather than argue, he removed himself from the conversation and walked around the counter to the other side. He caught my eye and motioned me over. He then asked me what Branson's last name was, and not seeing any reason not to, I ended up telling him. He thanked me and drifted off into the store. I honestly did not think anything more about it, and went back to my conversation with the others. After a few minutes, Bucky walked up with a vaguely confused look on his face, and asked Branson, "Hey buddy, what is your last name again?" Branson, sounding a little annoyed, as if he were schooling a child, answered him. And again, Bucky walked back off into the store. When Bucky returned, he had a big old grin on his face. He motioned Branson to come to him from behind the counter, and he said to him, "Your name is Branson," while also saying his last name. Isn't that right? Branson once again confirmed that it was, and Bucky's grin widened even further as he reached for the handcuffs on his belt. He said to him, "I am so happy to hear that, because there's a warrant out for your arrest, and I'm gonna have to take you in. I'm gonna need you to turn around and put your hands behind your back." And once that happened, all of the conversations in the store stopped completely. I exchanged a well-earned shocked Pikachu face with my coworker. The shocked expressions on our faces melted away into absolute delight as our most annoying coworker was handcuffed and taken out of the store. I never did see Branson again, but Bucky was back later that evening and apologized to me for making me stay late. I told him I didn't mind, and it was all worth it for the show. I would have done it all over again just to see that idiot sabotage himself. So, as a little bit of a life tip, if you've got a warrant out for your arrest, it's probably best that you don't annoy a cop. What an absolutely amazing story. This Branson guy is not only super frustrating and annoying to deal with, but he's also a know-it-all. And I think you know that kind of person that I'm talking about. They're never wrong about everything, they always have some kind of comment waiting in the wings to share with the class, and they're always just trying to one-up everybody else. And they are absolutely obnoxious. But worst of all, this guy was secretly a criminal. He had a warrant out for his arrest, and he was clearly hiding something by trying to work at a convenience store. So with all things considered, I would also probably be super happy with my coworkers if I saw the most annoying guy in the store get arrested right in front of me. Like, that must have been a dream for the original poster. So it is truly satisfying to watch this know-it-all get put in their place, but also to see the hammer of justice slam down on somebody who absolutely deserved it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled guest freaks out on me in the hotel lobby, making all these crazy accusations, forcing me to call the police just to try and evict him. But after they couldn't do anything about it, I was left to my own devices, nervous and scared for my life the entire night. Here's what happened. It was 2:30 a.m. on a busy Saturday morning. Friday nights are usually busy, but tonight our hotel had received all the passengers from a diverting flight. So I had just spent the last half an hour checking in 60 unhappy people and was now drowning in airline vouchers and paperwork. I step away from the front desk to use a copier, and when I return a minute later, there's a man slouched against it with a can of beer on the counter. We have a beer fridge up here, but I can't sell any after midnight. So my first words to this gentleman are to apologetically inform him that unfortunately, I can't sell alcohol this late. This is always awkward, but guests trying to wrench the door to the fridge open after hours has ruined the lock, so I get lots of practice. He tells me that the beer is his, and he just wants a new key card for his room. Okay, of course. I apologize for the misunderstanding. I can certainly get him a new key. I request his ID, explaining the policy about needing to check when I hand out keys, and he gives me his license without complaint. And then suddenly he gets really angry. Not even just a little bit angry, but incredibly angry. He was livid. He doesn't appreciate being treated this way. How dare I talk to him like this? If I'm going to talk to him like this, he's going to give it to me right back. He called me all these horrible names, says I was discriminating against him, called me a piece of garbage, and that he's going to fire me and ruin my life. And when this was happening, I was just standing there blinking. He didn't seem to mind my asking for his ID. Was it the thing about the beer? Is this a joke? No, it's not a joke. He's screaming right now. He's completely apocalyptic. I tried to apologize. I say to him, "Sir, I'm so sorry I've offended you. It was not my intention." But he was not hearing me. He starts screaming, "No, no, no." He was screaming over me. He stated that I knew exactly what I did and that now I'm in trouble and that I'm going to regret this. He's going to make sure of it. I've handed him his new key by now, and he starts towards the elevator, yelling over his shoulder at me the entire way. He's calling me so many names, and he's going to show me exactly what's going to come my way, and that I'm going to get what's coming to me. The elevator doors close on him as he screams about how much of a jerk I am, and in reality, I'm just some guy behind the front desk. At this point, I'm stunned, and my heart is too rapidly distributing adrenaline, but the puzzle is starting to come together. This guy must have been on something. Either that or he's dealing with some kind of untreated mental illness, but he had the distinctive, wiry, dental deficient look of somebody who enjoys a very specific illegal substance. So I'm betting something along those lines. And with all that in mind, my plan was just to put a note about this encounter in our daily log, but that's when the elevator doors open up. It's him again, and he's already screaming at me from across the lobby. He's calling the police. He's gonna be pressing charges. In fact, he's on the phone right now, and he says that I'm in so much trouble. I'm going to be arrested. And it was at that point that I basically came to the conclusion that yeah, this guy was seriously on something. But now it's beginning to dawn on me that I don't know exactly what this guy is capable of. He's not letting this go. There are almost 300 rooms in this hotel, but tonight I'm the only employee here, and me and this dude have the first floor all to ourselves. Usually the hotel has a security guard on night duty, but not tonight. It's just me. This really is worst case scenario. Our guest is now striding with great purpose towards the front doors, hurling invectives at me the entire way. Is he going outside to wait for the police? I can only hope. I watch him go, and I couldn't get a word in if I tried. He appears to leave, and I continue typing my now somewhat expanded log entry. A minute later, he's back, headed towards the elevator, still yelling at the top of his lungs. Now he's telling me that he's called his lawyer. He's on a plane at this very moment, coming to ruin my life. He's saying that I'm such a jerk and that my life is basically over. The elevator doors then close. Not even 3 minutes pass, and the elevator descends again, and he's back, again stalking the front doors, screaming at me at the top of his voice in the lobby. He is now starting to make me nervous. I don't think he actually ever called the police, and I'm even beginning to entertain doubts as to whether this man even has an attorney on retainer. So just what is it that's repeatedly drawing his attention outside? Why does he keep making the same trip over and over again? It almost seems like he's working himself up to something. Does he have a vehicle outside in the parking lot? Does he have something dangerous on on him or something like that? My mind was racing. This continues for another 2 or 3 passes from the elevator to the parking lot and back, and my level of concern increases. With every loud ingress, I'm anticipating with growing alarm what implement of violence he might have collected during his absence. I know I need to act, but I don't know how to approach the situation. He hasn't technically done anything more than yell at me, and he is a paying customer. I try again to apologize for whatever has agitated him, but again, he drowns out my words with denials and vulgarities. A few minutes later, he storms up to the desk and throws a handful of key packets at me, containing perhaps 8 keys between them. He's clearly requested new keys a few times since checking in this afternoon. He screams that I have locked him out of his room. He paid $150 for that room, and he wants back in. He claims that I snuck up and locked him out because I'm just such a jerk, and that I had better give him new keys right now. So I numbly go through the motions of coding new keys, trying to explain that I didn't lock him out, but he proves less than receptive to my words. Some part of my shell-shocked brain is wondering how all these keys could have malfunctioned at the same time. Is he even at the right door? No, of course not, because he is whacked out of his gourd. He rips the new key packet out of my hand and takes off back up the elevator, loudly issuing proclamations about my character and impending fate. Now, I'm trying and failing to bring my focus back to the paperwork when the elevator again discharges him, now yelling something about how he's got some people coming, and when they get here, I'm in trouble. And at that point, I thought to myself, okay, that's enough. I've never evicted a guest from the hotel before. I don't even know if I'm allowed to do that. But this deranged man is now explicitly threatening me with something other than dubious legal action, and if my own safety wasn't enough of a concern, I'm also responsible for that of the property and all the other guests here. So I tell him that if he doesn't stop harassing me and return to his room, I'm gonna call the police and trespass him from the property. He loudly informs me that in fact, I will be the one leaving the property, and he then just repeats all the various things he was saying. I reply that I'm calling the police, and then I just do exactly that. He takes out his phone and starts filming me as he walks rapidly out to the parking lot. I notice that he's no longer yelling at this point. A lady answers on the other line, and I stammer out about how there's a guy at the hotel who is actively threatening me, and I think he's high on something. I suspect violence is imminent, and I would really appreciate it if a patrol unit could swing by whenever it's convenient and assist me in making him leave. She assures me that a unit is on its way. I leave a voice message for my manager explaining what I'm doing and why, and he texts me back immediately, telling me that while he's out of state at the moment, he has my back, and guests are definitely not allowed to send any kind of veiled threats towards me, so I am good to kick this guy out. Our guest makes a couple more circuits of the lobby, but now he is ostentatiously filming me with his phone and muttering about how he's got people on the way and I'm gonna find some things out when they get here. I silently assure him that we have this in common. 2 officers arrive 15 minutes later, and I'm very glad to see them. Our guest has now retired to his room, probably in anticipation of their arrival, so the cops ask me to clarify that I am formally trespassing the individual in question from the property. I confirm this and further express that I've never had to do this before, but I'm ready to cooperate in whatever capacity needed. The officer then asks me if he is a long-term tenant, because tenant laws would then be in effect, so I explained to him, no officer. He checked in yesterday afternoon and is due out today. The officers begin to put on gloves, and then the phone at the front desk rings. It's our guest's room. I pick up, and our guest informs me that his friends are coming, and when they get here, I'm in trouble, while also calling me a jerk in the process. I convey all of this to the officers, and they tell me that they're going to go up to his room, and they'd prefer if I remain in the lobby, which I say to them, of course, go ahead, do whatever you want. Thank you again for helping me. They then depart up to the elevator. A few minutes later, the 2 officers debark from the elevator to approach me, and our guest is not with them. They tell me that our guest has declined to open the door. They knocked, but he did not answer. Is he definitely in the room? Well, yes. He literally just called the front desk phone from that room, literally as they were standing here. They then asked if I could call the room so they could then speak with him. So I do exactly that, and I hand the phone to the officer. He reports that nobody is picking up. I tell the officers that I have the master keys with me right now, and I'm more than happy to assist in getting the door open. The 2 officers exchange a look. The lead officer then informs me that our guest has a reasonable expectation of privacy as long as he's in this room, and the police department will under no circumstances violate this. And at this point, I'm just confused. I tell him that I've confirmed with the general manager of the hotel that this guest is no longer our guest. Thus, he cannot have this room any longer, and he no longer has any claim over it. And now it is the hotel hotel's room, and the room is private property upon which this absolute psychopath is currently trespassing. I remind him that this man has repeatedly threatened me and that I am at this very moment expecting the arrival of a group of his associates, at which time I've been assured I will be messed up, which while it is not specific, it is surely a term implicative of danger to my person. I ask him what he's suggesting that I do about all of this. The lead officer tells me that I can follow whatever hotel policy I want, but that he is under a supervisory directive to not act or appear to act in any kind of way as an agent of a private business, so they will not be assisting me in evicting anyone. He will in fact not even go as far as to accompany me to the room, as that would constitute appearing to act as an agent of the hotel. He gives me his business card and assures me that they will intervene if our guest assaults me, and tells me that I should call the police again if I happen to see him again. And after that, they just leave. So, as it turns out, our guest was kind of correct. I am in fact just a little jerk. There was nothing I could do other than try to get back to work and hope that he would leave me alone and that his friends wouldn't roll up and try and do something to me. I guess I could have walked off the job, and maybe I should have, but I spent the rest of the night too jittery with adrenaline to concentrate and tensing up every time the elevator door opened or the automatic door stirred. His friends never did show up, and neither did his lawyer, and he never came back down to the lobby. I guess he decided to turn in and have a restful rest of his night, secure in the knowledge that I was a jerk who could do nothing to stop him from doing whatever he wanted. Then I went home and I tried to relax, only to realize that I couldn't stop shaking, and I was way too wired to go to sleep. So honestly, I'm just really unimpressed with the way the cops acted, and I really think working at a hotel at night might be way more dangerous than it's really worth. Yeah, that sounds like an awful situation. That guy was clearly trying to troll you and mess with you, and wanted to try and rile you up, and well, it worked. It would have worked for anybody else as well. Honestly, the first time he would have started screaming would have been the only time he would have screamed at me if that was me in that situation. I would not have put up with that for a second. There's no way. I would happily get yelled at by my manager if it means that this psychopath gets away from me. Hopefully there's some kind of cameras or audio in the lobby, because there's gotta be something that can try and prove that no, you were not making this up and this guy really was acting like a psychopath. But hopefully for your own safety, this never happens again, because that guy was absolutely unhinged and there's no excuse for the way he acted. Today I messed up by making a decision that cost me my fiance and my friends, and I seriously don't know what to do. My older sister has always struggled with mental illness. It didn't help that she was diagnosed with postpartum depression after her youngest was born 4 years ago. Sadly, she did unalive herself, and her kids are the ones who found her. The 7-year-old is the one who called me in tears, telling me that mommy won't wake up, without any hesitation or even consulting with my fiance, who lived with me at the time. I ended up taking responsibility of them. I did not want them to end up in foster care, but I was not prepared for how drastically my life would change. He and I were child-free by choice. I even had my tubes tied to be sure of that, and as understanding as he was of the situation, he broke up with me and ended up moving out. He felt like this was something that he did not sign up for. Not only did I lose him, but I lost my friends too. I did not have the time to hang out or have fun with them anymore. Their answer for that was just to get a babysitter, but I had more important things to do with that money. I already paid the babysitter enough because I have to work, and my ex leaving me on the lease by myself didn't make things any easier. I have to put the kids first and try to give them as much normalcy as possible. Swapped out impromptu road trips and parties for play dates and trips to the petting zoo, and this made me become too boring for them. None of them have kids, so they did not get it. They removed me from the group chat, and I just felt like my whole world is turned upside down. Everything I knew has changed. My nephews mean a lot to me, and I want to do right by them, but I had no idea that it would be so testing. I did what I thought was best for my nephews, but I could have never imagined that I would end up feeling so alone. Honestly, I first want to say that this is no mess up on your end. People come and people go. It always depends on the circumstances of life. Usually they just kind of fade out, and in your case, it seems like it was much more abrupt. Honestly, if people can't see that you're trying to do the best thing for these kids, then they are just not good people to begin with. I mean, honestly, the fact that your friends just walked out of your life and basically treated you like some kind of boring person now is inexcusable and so toxic. So personally, I would be thinking, okay, good riddance. I don't want you around, and clearly you are not a good person. So keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing a wonderful thing, and if I was in your shoes, while it would be hard, I absolutely would do the same thing, mostly because it is the right thing to do. An entitled Karen purposefully hits my truck simply because she didn't like the fact that I parked outside her house. house. And as a result, I released a tsunami of revenge pranks against this entitled Karen, forcing her to move out of the neighborhood and sell her house for way less than she asked for. Here's what happened. So I was visiting my cousin who lives on a street that has no garages and very few driveways, so everyone just parks on the street. This makes for a lot of people having to find parking where they can and walk to their house since the parking is so scarce. So I park across the street from his house at the first open space. There's no reserved parking, by the way. There's no handicap signs or anything like that. It is quite literally just street parking. When I came out to leave, a car has parked in front of me, but it's actually hit my truck and still sitting there touching it. It didn't do a ton of damage, but it did dent my bumper and my grill. Now, I assume the driver just didn't realize what they did. It's not big enough of a deal for me to call the cops, and I don't know what house they're attached to, since few people end up lucky enough to park in front of their own house around here. I'm basically going to forget about it anyways, unless I see the car's owner. So I snapped some pictures and I wrote down the license plate. Just then, another neighbor comes out and tells me he watched the car park and that the driver was mad that someone had parked in front of her house and she had her passenger get out and direct her to back up enough just to barely hit my truck. And they did this just to teach me a lesson about parking in front of her house. The neighbor tells me about how she's done this before to other people's cars, how everyone on the street absolutely hates her, and how he's caught her red-handed putting her extra garbage bags next to his trash can on garbage day because she thought he'd already gone to work. Those extra bags cost extra to haul. This entitled Karen has also taken people's cats and dogs to the animal shelter and instructed them to be put down. So overall, she is actually a witch of a woman. So at this point, I'm upset. And rather than confront her and need to get the police involved, I decide it's time to get some petty revenge. And that's exactly what I did, as I unleashed a plague of problems at a biblical scale on this entitled Karen's home, causing her so many problems in the process that she'll think twice of ever doing that to anyone's car ever again. So first, I took a syringe and I shot some super glue into all the house's exterior door locks. Then, me and my cousin had drinks on his front porch while we waited for her to get home. When she got there, I saw the grouchy-faced Karen in her late 40s, early 50s. She gave us a glare for literally no reason as she got out of her car. She of course couldn't get her key to work, and we watched her try and get in her house for over an hour before a locksmith showed up. He couldn't figure it out either, so she ended up getting a contractor to come out, break in, and then replace all the locks. She never had a clue why it stopped working, but you know what? That was just the beginning. The next day, I went there with a can of pepper spray, and I sprayed her front door handle with it. Pepper spray leaves behind a slight oily residue. People touch their face way more than they realize. So again, I waited on the porch with my cousin to see her come home. 15 minutes afterwards, she got home, and she comes running outside, holding her face and screaming. She tries to get in her car, but can't see anything to drive. We ask her if she's okay, and she doesn't know, so we just call the ambulance, and she goes to the hospital. She comes home, and she says the doctor thinks she had an allergic reaction, and instead of thanking us for saving her, instead, she said that if we were decent neighbors, we would have driven her to the hospital and saved her the cost of the ambulance. She then tells us that we're all worthless, just like everyone else on the street. Now, after this first prank, I honestly thought I was done, but when she said that, I was like, you know what? I think I got a little bit more. So I wait a few days, and I drove to my cousin's house again, and lo and behold, her car isn't around. So I walk around her house just inspecting what's going on. I see a small broken window pane in the basement window. She has an unfinished basement you can see through the dirty glass. So I went to the local pet store and I bought 100 gray mice, making sure to get 50 males and 50 females. I went back to her house and I dumped all 100 through the broken window, along with dropping in some food for some good measure. Fast forward a month later, and she has major exterminators over there every week after she puts her house up for sale. All the neighbors badmouth the house to all the potential buyers, and she ended up accepting an offer over $100,000 less than her asking price. And honestly, good riddance. And now, as a result of her leaving, nice people finally live in this neighborhood. So it looks like karma finally came back for this entitled Karen. First off, I want to say don't try any of what you heard at home. This is all awful ideas, and it's coming from someone who clearly has jaded morals. Like, literally everybody in this story is an awful person. I just want to first say that. All of these people are jerks. There's no way any of this is appropriate. The entitled Karen's a jerk for literally putting down dogs and cats that other people own, and the original poster is absolutely a jerk as well for all the things that they did to this person's house. Like, across the board, everybody's a jerk. I'm really sorry to say it. and I think this might be a first for me, because typically in these stories there's some kind of good guy and bad guy, but this is like everybody's a bad guy and everyone's just trying to get each other back. So in that regard, I would say to the original poster, you really shouldn't have done that, and you're lucky that she didn't find out about all the terrible things you did to her house. Is it funny, and did she kind of deserve some kind of karma? Sure, of course. What was described about this entitled Karen is awful, and there's no excuse for some of the actions that she took. But at the end of the day, you released over 100 mice into her basement. Like, that is crazy. I cannot imagine dealing with that when you're trying to sell your house. But either way, this is a hilarious story, and it's honestly crazy to me the steps people will take to try and get back at someone who clearly wronged them. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My narcissistic ex just ended my relationship, and now she has all these demands that she expects me to follow, and at this point, I don't know what to do. So I've been in a relationship with a woman for almost 8 months. In the beginning, everything was amazing, but about 4 months in, I noticed that she started being less affectionate. I let her know that this was an issue for me and asked why the sudden change, and she always blamed it on being stressed out. I had genuine feelings for her, so to end the fight, I pretty much accepted that answer as well as less affection in order to move on. From there, things continued to go downhill. I noticed that she started displaying sketchy behavior with her phone, and we would get in arguments about it, and she would always flip it back to me. She would call me paranoid, crazy, insecure. I even caught her one time back on a dating site, and she claimed that it was a bait profile to see if I'd be crazy enough to find it. Again, stupidly, I let it slide, and I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Throughout the entire relationship, I gave her the most consistent effort I could. I was always available to her and her small child. I do favors for them. I'd give them my time whenever they needed it, took care of them to the best of my ability, and always put them first. There were plenty of good times, but always in my gut, I suspected that she was not being honest with me. But again, I cared about her so much, I continued moving forward. So many times she said that I was the only person who ever showed her any kind of kindness, the only person who would ever consider her, as well as being the only person who would keep their word and take care of her. She said that she needed me and that she missed me constantly. She would call me and text me daily and would spend time with me almost every single day. Fast forward to February, and we joined a new gym together. We had been talking about it for a while, and I decided that I'd pay for both of our memberships since I was doing better financially and I wanted to treat her. She agreed to the idea, knowing full well that it was very expensive, as well as a 12-month commitment. One day before a workout, the sketchy behavior was so bad that even though I felt horrible about it, I went through her phone in the locker room. What I found made me sick to my stomach. She had been on dating sites the entire time and had been sending sketchy text messages to multiple people in graphic detail, along with sketchy photos, if you know what I mean. I was so thrown off by this that I foolishly didn't take my time and even look through everything. I came back out and handed her her purse and coat and stormed out of the gym. She chased me down, hopped in my car, and refused to leave. I told her what I saw, and her first instinct was to deny it, but she finally had to come clean upon realizing that I had seen a lot. We talked for over an hour, and she finally told me some truth. She basically said that all my suspicions were correct the entire time. Everything I accused her of was right, and she lied about everything, even though she called me a narcissist, as well as crazy, insecure, and paranoid. Despite all that, I was actually correct, and she was lying to my face the entire time. She said that she was addicted to the attention that these people gave her, and that even though she didn't actually want to physically do anything with them, she loved the high of getting praise and attention. She said that she didn't want me at a certain point, but didn't want to lose me as well. She said that she should have never called me names because she is in fact a very messed up person, as well as a narcissist just like her mother, who she hates. Stupidly, after all this, I let my feelings get in the way, and I gave her a second chance. She was nice for about 2 days, and I noticed she went right back to her usual behavior, including calling me insecure again, especially after I tell her that I'm uncomfortable with her still following someone that she gave her number to from a dating site. 2 weeks later, I tell her that my needs still aren't being met over a long text message, which, wouldn't you guess it, she just completely ignored. The next day before the gym, I noticed that she was trying to pick a fight from the small things she was doing, but I just ignored her and did my workout. After the gym, we went to eat, and she finally said she didn't appreciate the long message. I told her that I needed to say those things, and she never wants to talk, so I had no choice. She pretty much started an argument and then wouldn't allow me to speak. She would tell me to talk, but as soon as I made a point, she would cut me off and threaten to leave. Finally, she threatened to leave again again and started standing up to put on her coat. Seeing this, I just got up and walked out of the restaurant, beating her to it. She chased me down, saying that I embarrassed her and that she could never go back in there and couldn't believe what I did. When I asked her, what were you about to do to me? She said that she wasn't actually gonna leave and that her coat wasn't on all the way. We continued to argue until she finally said that she was done. Later that day, I messaged her to fix things, and she essentially said that she needed some space. I messaged her once more apologizing and left it at that. The next day, she calls me to check in and see if I was okay. I told her I'm not okay and that I wanted to actually have a conversation, but she said no and that she was too stressed and that things were done. From there, I sent 2 last messages, one explaining how she's treated me and one saying that we should talk when she's ready and that I would go to the gym at night so she wouldn't bump into me since she would only go during the weekday mornings. She responded and said the following: "Hello, I apologize for the late message. If I do not tell you this, I do not want you to think something else will happen that won't. This is the 3rd and last time I tell you to stop. I told you verbally, I've told you over text message, and I'm telling you again, please stop. I'm done. You also went against your word and said you only go to the gym at night, and you went this morning. It does not matter if it's the weekend or not. If you say something, please stick to your word or inform me. I would feel more comfortable if you went to a different gym location so I could stop checking your location. This is my hometown now, and I would rather not bump into you. If you can't do that, please let me know. Again, I am not trying to say this in a rude way. I'm just trying to get my point across and be as clear with you as possible. And again, please let me know if at any point you want anything or if you can't cover gym expenses so I can figure out what to do since I don't fully believe you will cover it. And I told you months ago I could not afford it. Please let me know about that. Thank you." And after receiving that text message, it honestly begs the question, how on earth should I proceed? I know I was mistaken in trying to move things forward after catching her cheating, but that is done now. I gave my word that I'd continue to pay the gym because I feel bad about leaving her with that bill. But at the same time, the fact that she is trying to tell me to switch locations and keep my word on what time I'm going is honestly really bothering me. It's honestly so confusing and I don't know what to do. I can't believe you're having trouble figuring this one out because your girlfriend cheated on you and now she's asking you to pay for her gym membership. This is honestly an easy solution. It's time to cancel the gym membership and tell her to take a hike. I mean, seriously, she used you and completely went behind your back and has treated you awfully for such a long time. And that is completely unacceptable in a relationship. Like, there's literally no good reason for you to put up with that for a second. I mean, just look at some of the things that she's saying. She's making these wild, weird accusations. She called you paranoid and crazy, as well as all these other things just to try and keep you quiet so that you would stay off her trail so that she can keep you in the dark. That is messed up in my opinion, and that is not something that spells out as a good relationship in the slightest. You don't owe her anything. She blatantly cheated on you and she has constantly gaslit you. The only reason she's reaching out to you again is because you can provide something for her, and that's a gym membership. She doesn't care about you. You don't owe her anything. So cancel the gym membership and block her number. Go wherever you want. She has no control over your life, and you do not owe her a single thing because this lady cheated on you, and she absolutely is just trying to use you just to get a free gym membership. My fiance's awful parents make her cry every single week, and she won't let me set any kind of boundaries, and at this point, I don't know what to do. So my fiance and I have been challenged by her parents for years now, and whenever I want to talk to them to set some boundaries, it's always a fight. So for some context, I'm going to outline our latest drama, but here are a few points to keep in mind for some context. We've been together for 6 years, and this sort of behavior has been going on for years, and they act this way towards everyone in the family. Her brother actually ran away at 19 years old because of everything. They don't talk about it, but the parents haven't heard from him in years. Of the 5 siblings, they have all basically been forced into being yes men, even though they will open up about it behind their parents' back, so it's challenging to find support. We have it the worst because my fiance is the oldest, and I have a decent career as well as good habits, and I don't brag about it at all, which seems to create some kind of jealousy. There's nothing I can really do about it, and I don't bring it up. Also, her parents constantly demand we respect them, when we give them far more respect than they have earned. Their definition of respect is for us to do whatever they say and to never challenge it or question it. And now with those points in mind, let's get started. A month ago, we were all at a family gathering, and my fiance's mom got drunk. I had work in the morning and I had to get going, so I stepped into another room where my fiance and her mom were talking about the car I was selling. She was acting like I had been trying to sell it for a long time, but I only posted it online the day before. She starts implying that I am lying about what day I put it for sale, and every time I try to clear the air, she cuts me off. After the 5th time she cut me off, I asked her to stop interrupting me so I could explain what was going on. I was direct but not mean. She then responded by mocking me and acting like I was being a baby. I calmly told her she was hurting my feelings, and I asked her to apologize. Now, this was the first time I have witnessed someone being this direct like this. I did just want to take the high road and ask for an apology and be done with it, but she starts screaming and ranting, and eventually she storms off. Everyone at the party was embarrassed and confused by her behavior. We say our goodbyes, apologize for the excitement, and then we head home. My fiance and I cry in the car because we know it can't end well. Just as we pull away, my fiance's father calls and he's drunk. He tells me I should be glad I left. He goes on to talk about how disrespectful I was. My fiance tells him not to lay a finger on me and then hangs up on him. I call him back with my fiance in the other room so we can hash it out. I tell him I'm not going to come there because I have no plans for any physical altercation, if you know what I mean, but I will give him a forum to explain what he was told. He then starts going off about how I have always been disrespectful to his wife, which is not the case at all, and anyone you ask would be surprised to hear he feels that way. I challenge that and ask for some kind of example, and that's when his wife takes the phone to yell at me, and I tell her this is very inappropriate. I am getting married to their daughter, and I'd like us to be a big family without resentment. She asks how that could be possible, and I tell her to own up to her own mistake and apologize. She does, we say our goodbyes, and I tell her I will see her again soon. Now, ever since then, things have been awful. They pretend everything is fine, but they took most of the money they promised us for the wedding, which is fine, I didn't ask for it anyways, but they did it just to hurt us. And they constantly give my fiance the cold shoulder. Last night, we were planning food for the wedding with my parents because hers won't pay anymore, and my mother and my fiance decided to call my fiance's mother just to include her. She answers the phone drunk once again and starts making rude remarks about how she has to tell her family we're feeding them snacks at the wedding, and is super rude in general. My fiance has a panic attack. Luckily, my mother is pretty healthy as far as things go, but I feel so disrespected that she would talk to my little old mother like that at all, let alone when she is footing the bill, not to mention the damage it did to my fiance. I woke up this morning to my fiance crying on the couch. Her father had been blowing up on her all morning about how disrespectful she was last night, which is a lie because she never fights back. She just took it while her mother laid into them. She is never disrespectful, it's just her parents that really are. So it really begs the question, how can I set the boundary here? I just want to go into my life knowing my wife and I will be respected, and not cry every week because of these bullies. I am worried that things will be worse for everyone if I continue to ignore it. But what if the same comes from speaking up? What should I do? First off, I think it's important to note that you cannot set boundaries for your fiance. It simply would not work in the way that you were hoping, and honestly, it's probably just going to make things weird in the end. You can set boundaries for yourself when it comes to your interactions with them, sure, but when it comes from your future wife herself, it just does not work that way. That literally has to come from her. Like, the ball is quite literally in her court, and if she cared about you, she would make the steps necessary to make this change in her life, regardless of how scary it might be. Because it sounds like your fiance's parents are exactly as you describe them. They are straight up bullies. They have bullied their children into being yes men pretty much their entire life, and from the sounds of it, I really don't blame her 19-year-old brother for running away and going no contact. Like, if I was in his shoes and I had to deal with that growing up, I absolutely would have cut town and said, you know what, enough is enough. So this has to come from your fiance, and I'm telling you right now, if she can't set these boundaries now, you better believe they will never be set in the future. And that's not fair for you in the slightest, because guess what, they're never gonna change, but your fiance sure can change, and she can put her foot down and say, no, you are not gonna talk to me or my husband like that. Literally, her inability to cut contact with them has pulled you into an awful relationship, and they've extended that to your own mother. Also, for context, the original poster in this story is 26, and the fiance is 27 years old. You would think by that point you would be ready to move on and have some kind of boundary with your awful parents. So to that regard, I really wish you the best of luck, because if this doesn't change now, I can guarantee you, in my opinion, this won't change anytime soon. My entitled friends refused to pay me back for the $700 I loaned them when they claimed they were in desperate need, and as a result, I got furious. So I decided to get some petty revenge, and I got their car towed away away that they hadn't made payments on for over 5 months. Here's what happened. So 2 months ago, I lent some of my friends $700. They came to me begging to help them out to catch up on bills, specifically on their car loan. They told me they were 2 months behind on it and didn't want it repossessed. So me being the gullible soft touch that I am, I lent them the money. Now they promised to pay me back $233 per month for 3 months until I was fully paid back. And I didn't even charge them any kind of interest. Well, it came to the first month and guess what? Yep, you guessed it, no payments to me. They came up with this really half-baked excuse that they were behind on other bills as well now. So the next day I take a drive to their apartment to discuss it with them. And what do I see when I walk into their living room? A brand new 52-inch LED smart TV mounted on the wall. At first, I didn't say anything about the TV. I asked them why they didn't keep their part on our agreement to pay me back, and I got the same excuse. We're really backed up on our other bills and have been paying those off too. And it was right about then that I pointed out the new TV, and I said to them, well then, is that a new TV? Because last month when I was here, it was not there. And the answer I got floored me. They told me, you know what? It's none of your business what we spend our money on. They then claimed that they would start paying me back next month. Now, I was fuming so much, I just walked out and went home. So I thought to myself, I will give them till next month and see if they will start paying me back. Well, next month came along and guess what? Another BS excuse came my way. This time it was their dog that got sick and they had vet bills that they needed to pay. So now I was absolutely enraged. And so I decided right then and there that I was ready, able, and planning on getting some serious revenge. I drove to their place last night at 3 in the morning and wrote down the VIN number to their car and the license plate number. The next day, I started calling car repo companies to see if the car was up for repossession. Well, guess what? It was. Those lying jerks never made a payment on their car on over 5 months, and I found out about it. The woman I spoke to was nice enough to tell me who the lien holder was. I then told her I knew where the car was, and I was willing to let them know for a finder's fee. They agreed to a $250 finder's fee, which was honestly pretty sweet. So I met with a repo agent 3 days later and showed him where the car was, and he handed me the $250 and then went and hooked their car up to haul it away. Meanwhile, I was sitting in the tow truck the entire time. The next thing I see is those lying jerks come flying out of their apartment, screaming at the tow truck driver that he can't take their car away, that they were all caught up in their payments. And that is right when I stepped out of the tow truck and they saw me. I looked at them and I said, that's a load of garbage. You're not caught up. I spoke to your lien holder and you're over 5 months behind. And this is what you get for lying to me and ripping me off like jerks. Now don't get me wrong, I would never do this to family or relatives, but jerks who try to pretend to be my friend, who lie to my face and rip me off is another thing. So honestly, they had it coming. Yeah, these supposed friends are absolute jerks to like the highest degree. They seriously ripped you off completely. They stole that $700 right out of your pocket and they never had any intention of ever paying it off. I mean, if I went to their apartment to try and work something out and try and come to some kind of agreement for them to pay me back or something along those lines, and I saw a brand new TV that I knew for a fact they bought with my money, or at the very least spent their money needlessly on, I would be furious. It is so dishonest to ask for money from someone and then promise to pay them back, only to then never pay them back in the first place. Like, that is so toxic. So hopefully in the future, the original poster is a lot more selective with who they give their money to, because clearly these friends were not very good friends to begin with. And hopefully for the sake of the original poster, nothing like this ever happens to him ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My partner of 3 years wants me to work full-time, even though I'm happy working part-time and I make just about as much part-time as she does full-time. And now as a result, I simply don't know what to do. So for some context, I'm working in a fairly well-paying position by local standards. It's not that I completely dislike my occupation, it's just that it's rather boring. By 2019, I reduced my working hours by 40%. That seems like a lot, yes, but I was still easily able to pay my rent for my apartment in an in-demand, well-connected neighborhood in a big in-demand city. As a side note, I'm living in Germany at the moment, so essentially all apartments are rent-controlled with indefinite contracts, not to mention paying for 3 international vacations a year and saving some good money on top of that. And that's after all cost of living expenses. I also discovered after reducing my hours that I'm much happier as a result. I get sufficient sleep almost every day, I have time time to exercise 5 days a week. I expanded myself, and I'm doing stuff that's intellectually stimulating as well as meaningful when it comes to the volunteer work that I'm doing, and I'm honestly really interested in it. The punchline is I'm stress-free, and yes, I also have more free time to just do unreasonable things like watch a movie or anything. But with all of that in mind, unfortunately, my partner of 3 years is getting more and more unhappy with my situation. Me working part-time wasn't an issue when we met, but after moving in together about a year ago, she started making negative comments, questioning how I'm not bored in the first place and that I'm just lucky. And she's not saying this in a congratulatory way. It really is in a condescending tone. This recently escalated to a point where she is almost insistent that I work full-time. Just to be clear, she is in general a nice person and well-educated, and it's not an imbalance of income. Despite working full-time as team leader, her salary is about the same as my part-time salary. For her, it's about generating more savings for our future. We didn't talk about it in detail, but it seems for her, the idea of buying a house, if it's affordable, seems to be a life goal, and just slacking off is unacceptable, basically implying that my free time should be used for more income, and that this is something serious for her. And it also doesn't help that I'm the only man in our wider circle that decided to work part-time and still makes as much as I do. So it honestly begs the question, how do I resolve this growing tension? Splitting up over this would probably not solve the issue. I like her, and a potentially different partner would probably have a similar attitude. In Germany, it seems men rarely work part-time voluntarily, and on the other hand, working part-time really made me a happier person. I'm not struggling to pay my bills, and if it comes up, I'm fine with raising kids in a city apartment rather than buying a house and 2 cars just to commute from the suburbs to my job. Am I destined to choose between a partner or a happy part-time life? What should I do? It's honestly disappointing that your partner is not more on board with your mental health. Clearly, you're making enough money to make ends meet, and you're able to save up a little bit of money on top of that. And as a result, you're happier than ever. You have more free time, you're able to do things that you want to do with your life, and it sounds like your quality of life has really improved. And in my opinion, if I was your partner, I would be ecstatic that this is what's going on in your life. I think if anything, it sounds like your partner is just super jealous. You make as much as she does, and you only work part-time. You now have more time to do things that she probably wishes she could do. So she probably just wants you to work not only for the money, but probably so she can feel like you're both working hard to get what you have. So in that regard, it's really disappointing to see the way she's acting. Because honestly, how could you not want your partner to be happy? How could you not want them to have more free time to do what they want and to literally just be happy? Like, there's so much more to life than just making money. And if you can make enough money to make your ends meet, then in my opinion, I don't see there being anything wrong with just taking your time and enjoying your life. So hopefully some kind of conversation can come out of this where you can explain to your partner that yes, I am happy, and no, I don't want to work full time, because it sounds like you have a really good thing going, and it really would be a shame for you working part-time while still making all this money to be the reason that you two end up breaking up. My dad's stepmother and stepsisters essentially stole the money that my grandfather left behind for all of his family, and we are so upset by this news and what happened, we honestly don't know what to do. So I'll be 28 years old this year. My dad will be about 60 as well. When I was 4, so in the early 2000s, my grandfather passed away from cancer, and he was 63 years old. For a bit of background about him, he was born in 1937 and was a kind man, but I barely remember him. But there are some wonderful pictures of us laughing together. He was in the Navy during the Cold War, and he was the engineer of some submarines that were used at the time. He married my grandmother in a Catholic ceremony in 1962. My dad, who is his oldest kid, was pretty close to him as well. My younger brother is named after him, and my grandmother, who is a firm atheist, divorced him in 1979, leaving their 3 children behind with him, though she did return for my aunt after a year or so. My grandfather was crushed, and so my dad, at the early age of 12, essentially raised his younger brother and took care of the house. The house in question is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1-story in the Bay Area of California, one of the most expensive places to live in the country. It was paid off entirely well before his passing, and he left behind a substantial amount of money, but more on that later. In the early 1980s, he married my stepmom. They loved each other very much. She too had several children from her first marriage, 3 daughters I think, but I've only met 2 of them. They're about the same age as my dad, maybe a bit younger. In any case, my grandfather passed away in 2000. For the remaining 18 years of his second wife's life, she never worked, never got on any any kind of government assistance, and in that time, my dad always treated her very similarly to his biological mother, despite having been 15 or 16 when he met her. She was my grandmother the same as my two biological grandmothers. In fact, I saw her the most frequently of the three until we moved to another state. She treated me like her grandchild, and my dad like her son. I didn't even know which of my grandmothers wasn't related to me until I was older. It was all the same. In fact, all three of my grandmothers got married and had their first child before the age of 20. All three of them got a divorce, and they all gave me the same advice. Don't do what I did. I have followed that advice, which all three of them really appreciated. Anyways, she passed away in early 2018. She never told us that she had cancer. No one knew until after her passing, except for her eldest daughter. We were all devastated, of course, but she was nearly 80 years old. She was just the same as I remember her being when I was 5, but she had indeed aged. My grandfather's entire estate went to her upon his passing, but we never got a penny of it. My dad, his eldest son, his biological son, didn't get the house that he grew up in. A house the same size in the same area cost between $650,000 all the way up to $1 million today. Instead, it went to a woman who lived there for 2 years before she left for college. The rest of his estate, which my dad's stepmom had been living comfortably off of without working for 18 years, went to all of her daughters. In her will, she specified that my dad, his siblings, or any of their children were not to receive any of the estate. None of it. We never got a penny. We don't even know what happened to it. My dad asked his stepsister, the one who was the executor on the will, and she refused to even discuss it. She yelled at him for asking, blaming her grief on refusal to talk about it. Well, it's been 5 years, and she still refuses to discuss it. That money could change our lives. This is a woman who I always thought loved my dad. I thought she loved me too. She gave us handmade blankets, and my dad, who kept one of his beds for as long as I can remember, has since donated them. The betrayal I felt, the betrayal my dad feels, is probably the worst part, because his stepmom, the woman I had always thought of as my grandmother, is gone now, and we can't even ask her why she took the money from us, why she denied us the house that my grandfather passed away in, where my dad grew up, where the only memories I have of my grandfather all take place. I'm someone who wants to think the best of everyone, but that's a lot harder when the person who wronged me is passed away and can't even explain themselves. I will never know why. I will never know what happened to that money. None of us will. It's lost, and so is everything my grandfather left behind. So overall, it honestly is a bad deal, and it really, really is unfortunate. This really is unfortunate overall. You think you know your family, but honestly, they throw you a curveball even in their passing. And that seriously is unfortunate. It's really, really disgusting that your grandmother would pull that on you, that she would make sure all of the money and the estate went to her daughters, instead of having any of it go to your dad and your family. In my opinion, that's completely unfair. And I bet you the only reason that the stepsister is not talking about it is because she knows the truth, and she doesn't want to reveal it to your dad. And that in and of itself is so toxic. So hopefully, for the sake of your own happiness and the happiness of your father, things are able to work out for the best, if anything, just so you can move on with your life. Because the way you've been treated is absolutely inappropriate, and you don't deserve this in the slightest. I found out that one of my girlfriend's guy friends was actually a former friends with benefits, and I'm just now finding out after the fact, and I feel so betrayed I honestly don't know what to do. So first, for context, we've been dating for about 1.5 years now. A couple of months into the relationship, I had called her late one evening to ask a question. This was around 11 o'clock p.m. on a weekday, the night before her birthday. As we were talking for a bit, she said she couldn't talk much longer because she was busy. She then yelled out to somebody that she'll be right down. I asked her playfully if she was talking to her dog, and she said, no, I have a friend over right now. And she said this guy's name was Chris, who she had told me before, when we had talked about past friends and past relationships, that he was a guy friend who had admitted he was in love with her in the past. I didn't ask any more questions, and I said goodnight and hung up the phone. The next day, I told her that we needed to have a talk about the previous night. We talked about it, and it turns out that he brought her a cake to her house by himself, all for her birthday. I told her that I'd like to meet this friend of hers that had professed his love for her, so I could put a face to a name, and to make me more comfortable with the situation. I told her I was a bit uncomfortable with the fact that she had a guy in love with her over at her place at night and was accepting birthday cakes and gifts from him. I told her it seems like she was leading him on still. She then said it probably wouldn't be best to meet him. She explained that he he doesn't really get along with other people, and he was a bit out there with his personality, where he doesn't really get along with any of her friends. It was always just him and her that hung out. She said she would still ask him though if he felt comfortable meeting me in person. A month went by and she never brought it up again, and I didn't either as life just got busy, and the relationship was going great still. Then, one night, she texts me about 8:00 p.m. and says to me, "Oh, by the way, we need to talk. I'm going bowling with Chris at 8:30. It'll only be an hour or so." Not wanting to be that controlling or insecure boyfriend, I just said I hope she kicks his butt and left it at that. It rubbed me wrong the day after though, and the next day I told her we needed to talk. I told her I felt disrespected, that she told me she was going bowling with him just 20 minutes before, which was actually no time at all to talk about it. She just completely ignored how I felt and brought it up at the last minute, so there was no time. She knew I wanted to meet him in person, and it appeared she hadn't even tried for an entire month to make it happen. Then, just randomly, she says that she is going to hang out with him, as if she just completely put my asking on the back burner. She got defensive and started asking why I cared so much, and that she didn't think it was an issue of insecurity the first time that I asked to meet him, but now, after this time, it seemed like an issue of my insecurity, and that they were just friends and that's it. I responded and told her it's a matter of disrespect, that it seemed like she didn't care about my feelings to simply meet this guy who was in love with her in a group setting, so I could put a face to a name, and that I felt she was putting this guy's other feelings of not wanting to hang out as a group above mine, her boyfriend of all people. To her credit, she immediately texted him saying I wanted to meet him, and sent me screenshots of him responding that now is not a good time because he has family issues going on and isn't in a mindset to meet a new person. We basically wrapped up the call with her convinced that I was just insecure about their friendship, and me trying to explain it's a matter of respect, and me wanting to just meet him simply to feel more comfortable with them hanging out together one-on-one. I told her to not stop hanging out with him as I don't want to be controlling, and that was the last thing that we talked about. Fast forward a year and a half, and we have been living together now for about 6 months or so. It never came up again, and there were no issues with this guy in her life. I had no idea if she continued to hang out with him after the second time, and honestly, I didn't really care. I completely trusted her. Also, the entire time we've been living together, we've basically never gone out without each other anywhere, so I knew she wasn't hanging out with him at the moment. A few months back, we were hanging out with other friends playing some drinking games, and she was talking about a random time with him and finished it saying that they were no longer friends anymore. Now, she recently got a new phone and left her old one just laying around. My curiosity got the best of me, wondering why they no longer were friends, and I went looking in her phone to see what happened. It turns out that they were actually friends with benefits for months before we had met up, and that she continued to be friends with benefits with him until a couple of months or so before we made it official. She stopped being friends with benefits with him after he told her he loved her when they were on a weekend trip together. She had tons of text messages to her friends at the time saying how attracted to him she was, and she had never been this attracted to anybody in her life. I found out that she continued to hang out with him one-on-one for months after the bowling incident, hanging out at each other's houses, including having more bowling nights, even having him pick her up and drive around looking at Christmas lights together. But there was not a single shred of evidence of infidelity on her part. Everything I saw made it seem like they were truly only friends while we were dating, and that the last time they hung out together was around 7 to 8 months ago. My heart stopped as I was reading this, as deep down I knew something was off between their relationship, but I had pushed those feelings down out of fear of being labeled insecure if I continued to ask about the history of their friendship. Like I said, there was no evidence of her cheating with this guy, but I still feel absolutely betrayed. She chose to lie by omission about this guy and tell me they were simply just friends. I feel so hurt as well as betrayed that she did not tell me the entire truth of their history. I'm assuming she felt if she did tell me everything, she would feel guilted into stopping hanging out with him. I don't know what to do or how to bring this up. As far as I know, she did not cheat and has been extremely loyal to me based on other text messages I saw on her phone, but I still can't help but feel betrayed and hurt by her lack of transparency. Now I'm wondering how many of her other guy friends were previous friends with benefits that she is simply just not telling me about. Should I bring up this conversation, or should I just let this issue go as they are no longer friends? What should I do? I gotta be honest, regardless of what you do, your girlfriend is being super shady. I mean, the lengths that she went to in order to hide this aspect of her friendship with this guy is truly disturbing. disturbing, and I think that is a massive red flag in my opinion. Her calling you insecure and saying the problem was in your head is basically gaslighting, and that's not fair in the slightest. So honestly, I think you need to take a serious hard look at this relationship, because the way your girlfriend acted is absolutely inappropriate, and I don't blame you for feeling betrayed, as well as feeling that your girlfriend absolutely lied to you. My entitled aunt constantly unplugs my alarm clock just to try and ruin my life and make me late for school, and after several inconveniences from her, from turning off my alarm clock to also making copies of my car keys just so she can use it whenever she wants, I decide enough is enough, and as a result, I get her arrested for Grand Theft Auto and I ruin her teaching career. Here's what happened. So just before my senior year in high school, I turned 18 years old and bought a car with my saved up years of babysitting money. I would have liked one sooner, but my mother absolutely refused. At 18, in my big act of teenage rebellion, I went out and bought one. A couple of months later, my entitled aunt suddenly left her job from several states away and moved in with us. And she did this without her car. It cost less if she waited 6 months until spring to get it shipped. My aunt was incredibly cheap and a massive jerk. As a result, I was expected to share my recently acquired car with my aunt, all the way up until hers arrives. This seemed deeply unfair, but nonetheless, it was agreed upon that she could use it for appointments as well as job interviews, since I could take the school bus. I needed to be warned in advance because my bus stop was the second one of the route. It left a lot earlier than I needed to if driving direct, and I really like to get my sleep. So as the title suggests, you might be wondering what this has to do with an alarm clock. Well, my entitled aunt is one of those people who likes to rile people up, then mock them for getting upset. She's always got a complaint or a harsh word and is feuding with someone over something. Once she moved in with us, her complaint was my alarm clock. My room shared a wall with hers. My alarm clock was waking up her mooching, unemployed butt up every morning, and that upset her a lot. She would constantly ask if I could just go to bed earlier so I wouldn't need an alarm clock. The morning schedule at our house went something in the ballpark of this. At 5:30 in the morning, my mother leaves for the office, and at 5:45, my alarm goes off if I am in fact taking the bus, and my alarm goes off at 6:15 if I'm driving to school, with another alarm at 6:45 informing me that I need to leave if I'm driving. Eventually, later in the morning, my entitled aunt will eventually get up. She also approached my workaholic mother about the horrific inconvenience of my using an alarm clock. Her solution was that my mother should wake me up every day at 5:30 before leaving. My mother told her to try earplugs or to work it out between the two of us. My mother was massively non-confrontational and seriously wanted no part of my aunt's dispute. So my entitled aunt started sneaking into my room just to unplug the clock after I fell asleep. Now I'm a hard sleeper, so she pulled this off a few times. I had a good number of tardies before I figured out it wasn't the new cat who initially got blamed for unplugging my clock. I woke up to see her standing over my bed one night, which was incredibly creepy. I screamed like a banshee, waking up the entire house. She claimed that she was sleepwalking, and my mother let her get away with that lame excuse. So eventually, I just started sleeping with my alarm clock tucked under my pillow. There's no way my entitled aunt could do anything to it without waking me up. She was angry to have not gotten her way when she found out about this, and never let anything go ever. Her next move was to get up when the alarm clock went off and race into the bathroom with a shower. It was closer to her room than mine, so she always beat me there. She would stash magazines in there to sit on the commode, reading until right around 6:20, and this is after the school bus has left, but still before I need to leave driving direct. Once I was taking a very rushed shower, she would steal my keys and take my car, even though she's unemployed, and she would do this just to drive around all day. She claimed that I just wasn't paying attention when she said that she needed the car, but in fact, she wasn't telling me that she needed the car. When my mother wasn't around, she made snide remarks that if she was woken up, she had just as much of a right to the bathroom as I did, and that I could solve this problem by not waking her up. In addition to this, she would take my car in the evenings and on weekdays, always right before I had babysitting gigs, and she never returned it with any gas in the tank. She had to call roadside assistance twice for running out of gas because she guessed wrong on how far she could get on fumes. Needless to say, with everything considered, I was incredibly upset. Also, I was being massively inconvenienced. I had to beg friends for last-minute rides or just take a taxi cab. She continued to blame me, and my mother stayed out of it. We got into a cat and mouse game with my keys, where where I eventually just kept them on me at all times, even when I was in the shower. The keys came in the shower with me because the counter wasn't enough to stop her from pulling the bathroom lock and coming in while I was showering just to take them. Again, super creepy. This eventually resulted in her asking in advance to borrow my car for a job interview that she probably wasn't even going to in the first place. But in all actuality, she went to the key shop and got my car keys copied. The next day, with my keys safely back in my possession, she pulls the shower stunt again. She did it a lot, even when she wouldn't take my car. She was an absolute jerk. So I head out to the driveway with my keys in hand, and my car's not even there. I legit thought she had hotwired it until I got home and it showed no signs of tampering. I'm not much for poking the bear, but it was time to have this out. My entitled aunt quite smugly admitted to copying the keys, called me a selfish jerk who didn't know how to share, as well as many other unfortunate things. She said that she wasn't going to give it back, and then she looked at me and said, "What are you gonna do about it?" I then warned her that this car was mine, and she did not have permission to use it again. This was a bridge too far for me. There would be consequences. And when I said that, she just laughed in my face. The next morning, my car was not in the driveway. And you know what? I had expected that. My best friend's dad was a cop. I was practically a fixture in his household for a decade, and he was the closest thing I had to a father figure due to my own deadbeat dad. So I gave him a call utterly distraught that the car I've worked so hard to get has been stolen from my driveway. He's very sympathetic. Now, did I mention that my car had LoJack? For context, LoJack is basically a system that allows you to track where your car is. It actually was a very nice car, back when it was new anyways. We do all the reporting and whatever it takes for the cops to find it with LoJack. By mid-afternoon, they found it in the parking lot of an outlet mall. I don't know what the full details of the encounter was, as I've heard multiple versions of this part of the story over the years, but essentially, my aunt freaked out on them after being accused of theft, including having a tussle with one of the officers. It ended in charges of grand theft auto, resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, and some kind of license-related thing because she never switched it to her new state of residence. As this all took time, she didn't get arraigned that day, and as her unemployed self and her horrible credit and with no money, she couldn't make bail either. As I deleted her answering machine message of her begging my mother to come bail her out, my mother didn't even notice that she was gone for almost an entire week. Once she did notice, I explained that my car had been stolen and that I called the cops. I was handling the situation myself, like she suggested. The look of dawning horror was amazing. Then she shrugged and went back to avoiding all the confrontation. My entitled aunt served 2 weeks in county lockup until she took a plea deal. I suspect they slow-walked her paperwork just a little bit. What happened afterwards was glorious revenge. My entitled aunt's remaining savings were used up on all the fines and the court fees, so she finally got around to shipping her car and engaging in a job hunt. The only problem was, she was previously a teacher. She had yet to get her certification in her new state, and now she had a criminal record and was unable to pass the background check, which is honestly her own fault. So I guess it's time for a new career as a telemarketer. My entitled aunt didn't really bother me much after that. I learned years later she only went after kids hard, and I had proved enough of an adult that she realized there were consequences for her actions. We spent the next few months ignoring each other before I headed to college, and that's how a dispute over an alarm clock ended up ending my entitled aunt's teaching career and basically ruining her life. Your aunt sounds awful. She sounds petty, she sounds nasty, she sounds incredibly toxic, and honestly, what you did is the only option you had left in my opinion. I mean, she made copies of your keys, she would intentionally try and make you late for school, and it really does sound like she was trying to ruin your life, and all because you just didn't want to give in to her weird demands. So seriously, she had this coming. She sounds like she must have been a miserable teacher to deal with, and her actions and the way this all turned out is quite literally no one's fault except for hers. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. I feel trapped and deceived by my new girlfriend, as she is very clearly not over the passing of her previous boyfriend, and I feel completely stuck and I don't know what to do. So to start off with some background, I was married from 2005 to 2016. We never had any kids, and it wasn't awful or anything like that, and we never fought. There just wasn't anything there. It was like having a roommate. I moved across the US to start over after the divorce. I've had a couple of relationships since then, including one that seemed wholesome and promising, but fell apart suddenly in April of last year. I spent a couple of months healing, and in the meantime, finished paying off the last of my debt. Between the divorce, my dad's funeral, moving expenses, my car, and a private student loan, there was a lot on my plate. Now I have some federal student loans left, but I was otherwise in a healthy spot overall. So I wanted to find a serious relationship to go forward with, and jumped online for an online dating account. And that's when I met Kendra last June. Kendra is not her real name. She has a son who's about 9 years old, and I was more than okay with that. I get along well with kids overall. Now, I'm a love language touch type of person. That doesn't mean what you might be thinking, but I do need things like hugs, snuggles, cuddling up on the couch or in the bed, random dances and kisses, holding hands, affectionate touches. You get the idea. I made it overtly clear in my profile to the point that they opted to review it before approving it. Anyways, we had a few chats on the dating site back in June. Then we had a video chat, and then we decided to meet up for a date. Of course, needing to touch doesn't mean it's a first or second date kind of thing. That is for after a relationship is developing. So we sat and chatted, and we had several of the same goals, including the possibility of adding a child, which for our ages, especially hers, since she's 44 years old, there's not much time to waste. We were dating with the intention of not wasting time. We had a few more dates, and we would see each other every Thursday and most weekends, plus a little bit of a chat over text messaging. Things seemed to be progressing well. We went to the beach, we went to movies, we saw some Broadway shows, we went out for dinner, we held hands, we cuddled a bit, and we had our first kiss before the end of June. I did notice one thing though. She told me about 3 of her exes, 2 of which she was clearly over, and one of them, by the name of Miles, that's not their real name, she did seem fond of in her description. So I said to her, "You seem still really fond of this guy. Are you sure you're ready to be dating again?" She wound up telling me that she hadn't broken up, but rather he passed away tragically 2 years prior. So I understood it was completely different. They had all kinds of plans, and from her telling, it had been a very good relationship. I was glad she had the experience, and I was sorry for her loss. Then she told me about how she lost the chance for a husband, and a chance for her son to have a stepdad and stuff like that. And those are things that she really wanted. As the months went on, the relationship seemed to be going well. I met a bunch of Kendra's family in August, and she did start asking me when I was going to be able to move in. She shared a 1-bedroom apartment with her son, and was in the mindset that all of us would live in a 1-bedroom apartment, but it would just be temporary, and that we would soon transition to something bigger. Her parents and her son's dad both had very reasonable concerns about me moving into a 1-bedroom apartment with both of them included. I told her that I wasn't going to start planning a move-in, at least until I met and got along with her son. So we arranged a couple of meetups, and she started leaning pressure on me to move in. But I was okay with that, especially given that her apartment complex had made an accommodation to let us transfer into a 2-bedroom apartment without considering a broken lease. And after all, I was on board with fast-tracking a relationship, so I put notice to my previous apartment and signed lease paperwork with her to target a December move-in. I would first help her move her stuff, since it was within the same apartment complex, and then move my stuff from a town 40 minutes away. One of the first massive red flags came up before I moved in, but after I had already signed onto the lease. Considering her age, she got the idea that we should try an IVF, and then asked me how much room I have on my credit cards. So I told her that I would be supportive of her going on progesterone, but that wasn't an appropriate question, and IVF was not in my budget at this time. And for a bit of context, an IVF is basically a procedure to help someone get pregnant. That's the most basic way of explaining it. Once I got signed onto the lease, things started changing though. She was talking about Miles constantly. One night when we were together, I told her that I loved her, and she couldn't say it back. Okay, you can't force that, but when we spent Thanksgiving with her family, she talked about Miles with people the entire time. It's worth mentioning that over the summer, Kendra witnessed a court trial related to the circumstances of Miles' passing, and Thanksgiving was the first time since then that she had a chance to catch up with a lot of people about the goings-on. So in a way, I understood where she was coming from, but I also felt invisible. And then she did the same thing at Christmas as well. She talked about him the entire time. One of her relatives said, "I heard you're in love," and she replied by saying, "Well, not quite there yet." Now, it's one thing to need time to get there, but to spend the entire time talking about Miles and then say, "By the way, this is my boyfriend, I don't love him yet, he's just moving in though," does not feel good to me. I mean, how does that make me look to her family? By the end of December, I had finished moving in, and other things had changed as well. She stopped wanting me to touch her, or hug her, or sit next to her on the couch, or even to hold her hand. She's just not that into touch, which is fine. fine. But if that's the case, then she shouldn't go after someone who's made it very clear that this is something that's very important to them. It's also hard to talk to her sometimes because her text responses are very staccato. Now, I'm a texter, whereas she's an in-person talker, and that's fine. But in person, she's always got her earbuds in or otherwise buried in entertainment media. She's constantly engrossed in it, and there's no room to get close to her. The only time she was talking to me, she started talking about Miles. Every little thing we did together had a Miles story attached to it. She also had a shrine to him in the dining room, which she was using as a home office, a stand with his work helmet, and multiple mementos and pictures of him. I was fine with this at first. She's allowed to have mementos, but she just remained hyper-focused on him, and it honestly started to bother me. She also stopped sleeping in the same room as me. Every night she gets out of bed and goes to sleep on the couch. I'm not even allowed snore or anything like that, but she said she's just a light sleeper. She doesn't cuddle me in bed or touch me otherwise. She just curls over, then eventually gets out of bed and goes to sleep on the couch. She has told me that she wants to be engaged on the beach, but I later found out that was her plan with Miles, and she wanted to recreate it. I couldn't get through to her in person. I couldn't talk to her for more than a few seconds before she wanted to go back to Instagram or reality TV or whatever she was doing. So I wrote her an email. I said to her, I appreciate Miles, I like Miles, but I need you to tone down talking about him so much. It's been constant. And I also explained how I felt about the Christmas incident and told her that I had a need for physical touch. I ended it by saying, I'm not going to watch my life go by while you're wishing I was Miles. She told me that she would tone it down and spend more time cuddling with me, and bought me a case of Perrier, which I do like, just to say sorry. Except it only lasted a couple of days. She was right back to talking about Miles regularly, and nothing had changed about her sleeping habits. I decided to see if I could be happier trying to get used to it, but just a couple of weeks ago, I got home from work and she was on the phone with her parents, and I overheard her saying that she was bummed out that she had made plans to go visit Miles' father for Memorial Day weekend, but he declined her. Apparently, Miles' dad told her something like, look, we're grateful for you loving our son, but we're trying to move on. If we are ever out your way, maybe we will be in touch. She was going to plan to go spend a holiday weekend with Miles' family without even talking to me about it first. I wanted to confront her, but her son was home and she was still on the phone with her parents. So I asked her son if he needed anything, and he said he was good. So I told him I had to do something and would be back later, and I ended up leaving. I later texted Kendra and I said to her, I headed out and I'm not sure if I can come home tonight. You were going to plan going away for the holiday weekend with Miles' family without even talking to me about it first. I think I need a little bit of space tonight. I have some thinking to do. She texted me back that she already knew that Miles' dad would say no and only made the call because her son asked if they could visit. And I'm honestly not sure if I believe that. We had some back and forth via text message, and I said, you're still hung up on Miles. You have a shrine to him in the dining room, but you don't have any pictures of us together. You told me that you were closing the chapter and ready for a new relationship, but I don't feel like that's true. You're barely affectionate, you're not letting me be a partner to you, and your profile said feed me, but you won't let me cook for you or eat anything I make. And you should have talked to me before trying to make holiday plans with Miles' family. Now, there are so many more examples I could provide about how Kendra is not letting me be the boyfriend that she needs me to be. So honestly, I don't know what to do. Do I have a talk with her and say it isn't working out and that we need to figure out how to coexist as roommates until the lease is up? Do I take out a loan and just move out and pay my half of the lease to the leasing office? It's all so confusing and I honestly don't know what to do. This story legitimately is crazy because there are still so many details here that the original poster provides that basically proves that no, Kendra absolutely has not moved on from Miles. She still very much misses him and she wishes that he was basically still alive. And it's not fair for the original poster in the slightest. I mean, imagine that. You finally find a girlfriend that you're comfortable with, and you finally find someone that you can move in with and possibly start a life with. And she pulls a fast one on you and basically only talks about her ex constantly. Like that must be miserable to deal with on a daily basis. Not to mention the fact that she's completely ignoring this original poster's needs. She is absolutely disregarding his feelings in this regard, and it's not fair for him in the slightest. He basically got tricked into a relationship with someone who very clearly was not ready to have a relationship, and that is seriously not okay for this guy. Throughout this entire story, he keeps describing his needs to Kendra, but she keeps ignoring it and basically pushing it aside, only focusing on Miles, and that's not fair for the original poster in the slightest. So I think a good hard look at this relationship and thinking about yourself first really would be the best thing for you, because based on what you've described, she clearly does not love you in the way that you would want her to, and you honestly deserve way better than that. My fiance's crazy ex-friend keeps begging us for money, as well as trying to break me and him up over the stupidest of reasons. And despite our attempts to get away from this crazy person, she keeps finding a way back into our lives. Here's what happened. So this entitled Karen and my fiance have had an odd past, even before I met him. In high school, he used to have a big crush on her, but she was not interested in him in that way. They did become good friends though, and dated other people. After graduation, he went on to a serious relationship, and so did she. She was dating another woman and asked him if he would be willing to donate to them so that they could have a baby, if you know what I mean. And surprisingly, he agreed, so long as they worked out a proper legal contract so that he wouldn't be legally or financially responsible for the child, which she agreed to arrange. Sometime later, my fiance and I started dating. He informs me of this agreement, asking what I think and if it would be an issue for us in the slightest. I say that I think he's being smart about it, and I respect that this was an agreement made to help a friend before I was in the picture, so I don't have any issue with it, and I am okay with it. Now, this appeared to be the case until it did appear that her relationship was failing. Yep, she was one of those surely a baby will fix it type of people. Both my fiance and I became more worried the more unhinged that her texts became. Her relationship ended, but now she was insisting a baby would help her loneliness. While this was happening, my fiance and I were getting serious, and we were moving into an apartment together. One day while we were out near my parents' house, my fiance gets some alarming text messages from her. She tells us that she's in his dad's house, and his dad isn't even home. My fiance is texting her questions, and she's replying casually, as if she's doing a very normal thing. Apparently, she had let herself in with a spare key that he had given her years ago for emergencies. When asked what she was doing there, she claimed she was just spending time with his cat. Now, his cat isn't very social, and she was also taking pictures of my fiance's childhood pictures that were hanging on the walls, also that she could have an idea of what her future kids are gonna look like. Now, when we heard this, we were both incredibly disturbed, and I tell my fiance that I now have a stipulation to moving in together. I told him that this entitled Karen is not allowed to know our apartment address. Now, she's still baby crazy and starts demanding my fiance finally donates to her. Never mind the contract, she just needs this baby. My fiance gives her a hard no at this because not only is she clearly mentally unwell, but we know she doesn't have the financial resources for a kid, and I 100% back his choice. He tells her he can't do it and she can go elsewhere. For our time at the apartment, we lived in blissful silence from her insanity, but that came crashing down a month after we moved into a house. Apparently, she was in a relationship that whole blissful period because she just got broken up with. My fiance then asked me if she can come over because she was taking it really hard. I was incredibly hesitant, but kept thinking that we did now have a very large house, and it would be unfair to keep his friends away forever, especially if they are really good friends. He vouched for her that she seemed to be doing much better now. Plus, it had been like, 2 years now? So I agreed to give her a chance. I finally met the woman I demonized as some psycho obsessed with my fiance, and she seemed normal for the most part. I ended up spending more time with her than my fiance, since he's not great with emotional situations, and it felt like we became fast friends. She spent a few nights over while her ex was at their apartment, and we actually had a lot in common. Over several months, we became pretty close friends. We would confide life issues in each other. I believed her excuses for every red flag, showing that she's still unhinged. Towards the beginning, her ex still wanted to be friends, but wanted some space. The entitled Karen kept trying to ask for hugs or be clingy, pushing her ex's boundaries because she wasn't over her. Sometime later, the entitled Karen decided to try hooking up with a man and told me she thought she may be pregnant. I started asking what she was going to do, since she was struggling to pay for even herself, and if she even told this guy in the first place. She looked like the thought hadn't even crossed her mind and muttered something about how she didn't even think that he wanted a kid. When she told me this, I was shocked, and when I told her that she has to tell him if she got a positive test, she suddenly agreed, as if that was her plan all along. Luckily, in the end, she wasn't even pregnant, but after a few months of living in her apartment alone, she told me that she started hearing a voice that isn't hers. So I suggested that she should see a psychiatrist, since it could be a form of schizophrenia or something similar, which is entirely manageable with professional professional help. She acted like she was considering this advice, but nothing came of it and she never mentioned it again. Now, did I mention that this chick was baby crazy? She truly cemented her dedication to her dream of becoming a single mother, not just by texting me every couple of weeks about her goal of doing so and of moving away, but also by showing me her baby stuff. Oh yeah, she was prepped for any day that she might have a baby. A 44-gallon long storage bin filled to the brim with baby clothes of variety sizes and genders, plus a regular 31-gallon storage bin, mostly full of baby toys, as well as books and shoes. Now, I don't personally have any close friends with kids, but I have never met anyone with this much baby stuff pre-child. Well, anyways, one summer day, I was having a rough time. I was recovering from an illness that took its toll on me, and we had a roommate at the time who was like having a child of our own. The entitled Karen offered to come over and clean and listen to me vent. She cleaned up the mess, I couldn't, and we ended up going on a drive to talk in private. I confided in her that my fiance was back to having a huge problem giving people money again. He did this in the past, but stopped when I asked him to, because no one ever paid him back. He learned some of them lied and used the money for other nefarious things, and half the beggars weren't even his friends. Plus, this time, some of the amounts were in the hundreds of dollars. I was sobbing that we were months behind on rent when we really shouldn't be. She seemed sympathetic but annoyed at him. She then instantly suggested that I dump him, and I thought she was joking, but she was serious. I was genuinely baffled that she would suggest that I break up with him when our lives are so entangled together at this point that this was our first ever serious point of contention. She started trying to comfort me by saying that he's my best friend and that she loves him, but then in the same sentence, to then continue to trash talk him. I was getting annoyed because the things she was saying were just mean and two-faced. About a month or two after our serious talk, I'm checking my fiance's bank account to see if he has stayed true to his word. And this was nothing shady, by the way. He had given me permission to view his bank account whenever I wanted. And what do I see? Guess what? Hundreds of dollars sent to this entitled Karen. He sent $500, tons of small $10 to $20 amounts, $200, $300, just some nonsensical amounts. He says the $500 was because she said she was at risk of being evicted. I told him that we can't afford to pay for her rent when we're struggling to eat ourselves. He agrees to stop sending her money, but I'm mostly hurt that she would take advantage of both my fiance and me at this point. She knew he had a problem and that we were struggling financially too, and still took advantage of us. She knew that I was incredibly stressed out about our situation and didn't care in the slightest. One night, she keeps bugging my fiance for $10. He tells me he's just going to send it to her to shut her up. And when he said this, I said, okay, but I'm going to call her out for it. I tell her then to stop begging my fiance for money, and she replies by saying, well, I don't appreciate you calling me begging. I get paid Friday, and I'm going to pay it back. I don't like owing people money. It's who I am. Now, I know she isn't going to, so I back down and we play friendly again. She makes an odd jab at me when I say that I'm just making sure that she's not taking advantage of my fiance like other users in his life, because she says that she's been around the longest, longer than any of his girlfriends, which I just ignore because I don't feel threatened by her in the slightest. By Friday, I keep reminding my fiance to bug her about the $10, since she made a point of telling me that she doesn't like owing people money. Well, apparently she didn't like that either, because she would just ignore those messages. Come Sunday, she's talking about making a will, and this is presumably due to her fainting spells that she claimed to be experiencing at the time. We don't know if these were real, but this was the day before her doctor's appointment, which she had claimed before that she hoped that they would tell her that she's going to be passing away or something like that. Yeah, really crazy stuff. We were both done with her dramatic garbage at this point, and after reading her text out loud, I jokingly said, so about that $10, and we both just cracked up. He then actually sends her a text message asking her about the will, while also asking her about the $10, and thankfully she just left him on red and didn't even answer. 2 days after my fiance and I were talking about how we couldn't believe she still hasn't replied or literally said anything, my fiance checks other social media and discovers that she has unfriended him on Snapchat and Facebook. I check and she did the same to me. Now I'm annoyed, but I'm not too surprised at this point because crazy's gonna be crazy. But when I look over at my fiance, he is genuinely hurt by this. He doesn't say it, but I can tell she helped reaffirm his fear that his friends only like him for his money. He does say that she was one of the longest friends that he's ever had, and he can't believe that she would do that over $10. And at this point, I'm red with rage. My fiance goes to sleep sad, and I realize I can still message her on Facebook, even though we're not friends. I decide to play dumb and ask if we did something. She claims that she's taking a break from social media, but this was obviously a lie, because for one, she was sending me TikToks just the day before, and as a second thought, I saw that she had a mutual friend still added on social media, and also literally who takes a break by unfriending their friends. And even literally like the next day after this conversation, she updated her cover photo and her profile picture. I point out the fact that we still have a mutual friend, and she claims that she's going from the top down to the bottom. I straight up just say to her that it seemed like after my fiance asked about the $10, all of this started to happen. She says no, she's just been super busy with work, and she's planning to move. So after that, I just stop replying. The next day, I catch our roommate up with the drama because I am still seething with rage. He goes on to ask her what her name is, and I tell him. He pulls up her Facebook and starts messaging her. He says to her, "Hey, you got that $10? And she replies by saying, "Who in the world is this?" He then sends her a message by saying, "I thought you were taking a break from social media." And this entitled Karen sent a message by saying, "I keep my messenger open for friends and family." And then she blocked him. We both laughed at how dumb it was, hoping it wouldn't cause my fiance too much trouble. He enters the kitchen, and my roommate goes to him and says, "Listen, I did message your former friend." And my fiance just goes, "Oh, I know. I've been hearing about it. She sent me screenshots." We all bust up laughing about it. And then this entitled Karen gets to me. She sends me a screenshot of her sending my fiance $9 and says to me, "I also don't appreciate being bugged by your roommate, seeing as I have to explain to your fiance why it took me a moment to pay him back." And that's when I decided that the kids' gloves were off. I took my time and I sent back this absolute banger of a message. I said to her, "I didn't ask him to. I was just talking to him and he did it on his own. And it also took that to get you to explain anything. So don't make it sound like you explained it to my fiance first and then my roommate messaged you. It's kind of messed up that you ignored my fiance and me every time we mentioned the $10 that you owe him. Like the fact that you made a whole deal out of telling me that you get paid on Friday and that you were going to give it back to him, and how you don't like owing people because it's just who you are, to then you making me seem like a massive jerk for calling you out, all because you're asking my fiance for more handouts. And even still, you just ignore every reminder, so you don't even have a good enough excuse. Like if you didn't get paid, you could have said so and not been like, "Oh, I can't read suddenly." And after I sent that text message to her, she didn't reply. I waited for a few hours with a typed list of things I wanted to say before likely being blocked, and then sent it. Essentially, it was a long multi-paragraph wall of text in which I told her that we knew she unfriended us over this, as well as how much it hurt my fiance, and how we have both noticed her manipulative tendencies now, how it's not about the money itself, because if it was, we would be hounding her about the $500. Basically explaining that money isn't the real issue, but in fact, it's because she kept asking my fiance for money, knowing he has a problem with saying no. We simply can't afford to fund whatever she's doing, and it's putting stress on our relationship. And I specifically mentioned how she borrowed $500 from us after I had literally sobbed in her car about how bad our finances were, and she still took advantage of my fiance. I may have gone a little petty after this and mentioned it being a reoccurring trend that she goes crazy after a breakup, while also explaining why she never got to see our apartment. I directly called her out for entering my fiance's dad's house without anyone's permission. I called her a mooch, and I told her that she needs mental help. And wouldn't you believe it, she just left me on red. Not gonna lie, part of me kind of hoped that she would at least try to argue. I didn't want to believe someone would actually be so cruel to others and hang them out to dry. But despite everything I said to her, she went on to text my fiance as if nothing had happened. She vaguely stated that she wasn't comfortable coming over anymore, but wouldn't say why when she was asked. About a week later, she tried asking for $150 again, but obviously my fiance wasn't having it. He played oblivious, just like I used to when she tried dialing up the self-pity. I asked him to block her after this, and he did. Another 2 weeks went by, and she texted him from a new number, playing the same old game. This time she tried laying it on hard by claiming that she was super depressed over her financial struggles. My fiance just replied by agreeing, since we've also had bad financial struggles and his anxiety has been awful, while also struggling with intrusive thoughts as well, if you know what I mean. Now, I guess that wasn't the answer that she wanted from her best friend, because she switched topics almost immediately. She started saying that he should really break up with me because we're just not a good match, and that's when he blocked her again. When my fiance told me this, I just burst out laughing laughing. I knew she was trying to break us up, and I finally had my confirmation. I just never imagined it would be such a sad attempt. Oh, and by the way, I added up how much she borrowed just in 2022, and it totaled up to $1,670. But with all things considered, my fiance and I are so relieved that this entitled Karen is officially out of our lives. What a crazy turn of events. I mean, seriously, let's think about this for a second. This entitled Karen not only wanted her fiance to donate to her, if you know what I mean, also she could have a baby to cure her loneliness. Well, I've got news for you. A baby is literally the last thing you want if you're looking for any kind of solution in your life. Having a baby is a serious decision, and that is something you definitely don't want to take lightly. But it obviously seems like this entitled Karen was taking it lightly. And I'm personally blown away that the original poster even let this crazy lady back in her life in the first place. I mean, this entitled Karen has proven that she is not a good person, and she only wanted to be around to try and ruin your relationship while also begging your fiance for money. And sure, after a while of dealing with this stuff, this all would obviously become a game to you all, which did kind of lead to you trolling her with your roommate, as well as you talking to her about the $10. But in my honest opinion, I really think you should have just cut her off right from the get-go. She should have never been allowed in your house in the first place, and I think the original poster was completely misguided, as well as incredibly foolish for confiding in this lady who not even 2 years ago was begging for your fiance to basically give her a child. Like, what on earth were you thinking? That's not someone you want to confide in. So hopefully the original poster and the fiance learned a valuable lesson, and hopefully in the future, this entitled Karen plays no role in their life ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled customer freaks out when he realizes he has to pay for his drinks after being told by the organizer of the event that he didn't have to pay for a dime. And I unfortunately got caught in the crossfire, and I've never been more annoyed in my life. Here's what happened. So I had my restaurant booked out for a private event for about 150 people yesterday, and this was for a big sports event. This doesn't happen super often, and it's only the second private event I've worked, the first time being an absolute disaster, during which every member of staff cried at least once. Needless to say, we were hoping this time went a lot smoother. Now, we were just working on the info the organizers gave us, which we were led to believe had been communicated to the guests as well. Basically, if the guests had a pink lanyard, they were paying for drinks as they went. A gray lanyard, on the other hand, meant that they had a prepaid package and got free refills on beers, wines, and soft drinks. What's important to note is that they did not get spirits included. The event actually goes super smooth. We get their 2 courses out really quickly. Drinks are flying out the bar at a rapid pace, and we as a restaurant actually all smashed it, to be completely honest. The organizers told us to stop serving drinks at about 1 o'clock, get their checks paid off, and get everyone ready to depart on their coaches to the game. And this is where things started getting interesting. 3 of my 5 tables asked to talk to a manager when I told them the bar was closed. And it makes me question why they thought that she'd be able to do anything about it when we were just working on what the organizers told us. So honestly, I just don't know what they were thinking. Then one of my tables with gray lanyards got confused when I brought over the bill. One guy asked me, "What in the world is that?" To which I told him it was the bill, and the refills of beer they had were included in their package, so it was just the several double vodkas they had to pay for. He then asked me, "Since when do I have to pay for that?" And I obviously told him that was the plan from the start because, well, it was. Well, he was not pleased to say the least. He started yelling at me about how he'd ordered the premium package and wasn't supposed to have to pay, and about how this was an absolute disgrace and that he wanted me to get my manager right now and all this other stuff. After a few minutes of this and me gently explaining that we were working on the information provided by their organizers, he demanded I go get someone who is in charge. I was already sick of him, and I knew my manager wouldn't be able to do anything, so I just went straight to the top. I got the main organizer, and I asked him what was going on. He went to speak to them, then spoke to my manager, and I have no idea what happened or what was said, but somehow the guy ended up not having to pay for the spirits, and they were put on the organizer's tab instead. I do understand the guy's perspective though, especially if he thought he was getting everything included, and then that didn't happen. Honestly, if that happened to me, I would be upset as well. But bro, I am not the person to be yelling at, and in my opinion, it's a lack of organization as well as clarity on the organizer's part, not ours. Other than that, everything went well for the most part. I actually got some decent tips, and we were told we had all done really well. But still, despite that one guy who freaked out on me certainly put a damper on my evening. Honestly, if I was that guy, I might have gotten upset as well. If I paid for what I thought was a premium package and I was told, hey, I'm gonna get everything basically no matter what, and I wouldn't have to pay at the event as I already did pay, I'd be furious if that wasn't the case suddenly. And yeah, he could have handled that in a much better way, and while he definitely shouldn't have taken that out on the waiter, I do kind of understand where he's coming from. If anything, he should be angry at that organizer, because clearly they gave some misinformation here, and they basically lied to their customers, as well as the people that were going to the event. I mean, to go to an event with the expectation that your drinks would basically be taken care of if you bought into this premium package, and then all of a sudden the premium package only covers some of it, and you weren't informed of that, would be a major slap in the face. So honestly, the organizer is absolutely all to blame. They did not do this properly, and they did this in a shady way. So hopefully the next time they organize an event, they're able to have their ducks more in a row, because the way the people around them got treated was absolutely disrespectful, and all the anger and fury should not have gone towards the waiter, but rather towards the organizer themselves. My entitled Karen of a mother throws a temper tantrum, claiming discrimination against this security guard, all because they were asking for her receipt as she was walking out the door, and I've honestly never been more embarrassed about anything in my life. So I first want to start off by saying that my mother is well known to be a Karen, even going as far as joking about it herself sometimes. She is usually really sweet, but when it comes to staff or workers, her entitled Karen side comes out full force, and I have several stories in my past about her antics. So me and my partner are moving out of our house to a new town. So last week, I moved back home with my parents for a few days to clean out my old storage room, while my partner went down to the new town for his first day of school. My dad had a seizure the first day I moved home, so my mom asked me to help her with some general shopping, while my grandmother watched my 4 siblings and took care of my dad. I drove us around town to a few stores, eventually ending up at Kmart. She wanted to get some workout gear, so we go in, we do our shopping, and we head to the checkouts. And here is where things started to really go wrong. She grabbed the receipt and grabbed the items, getting ready to walk out of the store. And there has been a lot of thefts recently, due to the economic climate of my country at the moment. So security will quickly glance at your receipt, see the number of items you have, and let you out. Usually they don't do this to everyone, just the occasional shady person, which has gotten the company in hot water because of accusations of discrimination. So the company now makes it an effort to check all receipts, which I'm honestly fine with. As we walk out, my mother makes it past the security scanners before the young lady working as security guard asks for the receipt. And this turns out to be a massive mistake. My entitled mother immediately screws her face up and makes a loud scoffing sound before exclaiming loudly, "Excuse me, do I look like someone who would shoplift?" At this point, everyone at the cash registers is now looking over at us, and I feel like melting into a puddle just to get away, as I have such bad social anxiety. The poor lady puts her hands up in a defensive way and politely explains that we need to check everyone's receipts so we aren't discriminating against anybody. Well, my entitled Karen of a mother puffs up, screws up her face even more, and looks at her again and says, "But do I look like I shoplift? All my clothes are labeled, all expensive brands." She then scoffs again, winding up for another tirade, waving around the little paper that would have just saved me from embarrassment, all while flapping her lips like a shocked fish. She is slowly turning a lovely shade of tomato red and looks like she's going to burst. Realizing things are going to get much worse, I finally pick myself out of my mental puddle, grab the receipt from her claws, and show the security guard, who is still trying to placate the raging entitled Karen. I hand it over politely, saying, "Here, have a look, is this okay?" All while gazing longingly at those sliding doors, as I know salvation from the dirty looks hitting the back of my head is only a few steps away. The poor security guard waves me through, and I grab my entitled mother's shoulder to push her out the door, and she thankfully lets me, moving through and muttering about rights and managers, and how this lady was not doing her job properly, all while stamping her feet like a toddler. I look over my shoulder as we walk out and give the security lady, who looked like she had just been slapped, a compassionate little smile, and I mouthed an apology. The last words I hear before the doors of salvation slid shut was the security guard commenting in a small voice, "I only needed to see the receipt, it's my job." And I honestly felt horrified when I heard that. Relief flooded me as I realized that it was all over, embarrassment burning at my cheeks as I shepherd my entitled mother into the car. All the while she's still going on and on about how outrageous this was, and how she feels disgusting, all because she was asked to show her receipt. Now thinking that this was over, I hopped in the front seat, with my hands shaking and my eyes tearing up. But no, it was not over. My entitled mother then turns to me, scrunched up her face, and made made one last remark. She said to me, "This only happens because you look homeless. Next time, wear a dress." So now I don't think I want to take my mom shopping or go to Kmart ever again. Yeah, your mom was completely out of line there. Especially with the surge of self-checkout machines, it's kind of obvious that nowadays if you want to go grocery shopping, people are gonna be all over you to make sure you don't steal anything. Because unfortunately, that's kind of the world we live in. So the way your entitled mother acted towards this security guard was completely inappropriate. It was super messed up and it was not okay. And that last comment about you looking homeless and that you should wear a dress next time was completely inappropriate. There was no reason to talk like that. Literally, that has nothing to do with anything in this situation. Because in reality, next time just show your receipt. It takes like, what, 2 seconds? They're gonna look at it and say, okay, it looks like you bought everything, and then they're gonna send you on your way. Trust me, it gets on my nerves as well when I go shopping, but as of right now, it just kind of seems like that's how things are nowadays. So hopefully if you do go out with your mom again, hopefully she doesn't act like this, because I would be mortified if that happened to me in public, and I seriously probably would never want to go anywhere with her ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled Karen has worked their way back into our lives after my husband and I blocked them out of our life and told them straight up that we don't want to talk to them anymore. Here's what happened. So this story is an update to a previous story we covered on the channel, where the original poster and their fiance had to deal with an entitled Karen of a friend who was constantly begging for money, as well as begging their fiance to donate to them so they could finally have a kid. Here's what they had to say in regards to their update. So to clarify a couple of questions people have from my previous post, I am and was very aware that the entitled Karen wasn't a friend of my husband. I used the term in quotes, saying that they were best friends, and it was because she would refer to themselves as just that. After all, it is hard to convey sarcasm and tone, especially on the internet. Also, we struggle financially in the food insecure kind of way. That is to say that we were never at risk of going homeless, but there were times when the missing money would lead to grocery trips not being able to be made. Now, the biggest update of them all is that we've gotten married, so I can now refer to my fiance as my husband, even though we're still only engaged at the time of the events in this post. To anyone wondering why we would get married not long after such an incident, we had to push the wedding date up because I lost health insurance, which I desperately need since I'm disabled. So as some of you probably know from my last post, the entitled Karen wasn't done with my husband. I have to admit, I was bothered by some of the comments telling me to rethink if he was really done with her. It turns out you were all right. He casually mentioned to me that she texted him asking for money again, and he was trying to get the $500 back, and that was the amount that he explicitly said was a loan for her not to get evicted, even though that story was basically a lie. Now, when I heard this, I was shocked, because we just had a serious talk, and he said he blocked her and was done with her not that long ago. Now, he mentioned that he used to loan people money in high school and be really annoyed to not get any money back. I was wary, because this isn't high school anymore. People don't have to see you every day. I gave in because I felt too depressed at the moment to argue. I said that I'd look forward to seeing his new tactic before he went to sleep. Part of me thought I was being unfair by not giving him the chance to handle the situation the way he wanted. But this really upset me, and as crazy as she was, I still did not want to make my fiance feel like he had to choose between me or her. I didn't want to give him some kind of ultimatum. That whole week or two, I kept wanting to look through his phone, which is something I've never wanted to do in a relationship. I finally realized it was because he lied to me about no longer contacting her. So I started to wonder what else he lied to me about. So I nervously checked his bank account. No money was sent to this crazy entitled Karen, but he sent $40 to another friend on Thanksgiving, as well as $140 to yet another friend just the day before. At this point, I was just bawling my eyes out, thinking he'd keep doing this and making excuses, so then I would have to leave him. I could not stand by while he tried to play the hero to people who could literally care less about him. After I realized the issue, we talked and I did feel a bit better afterwards. I was honest about him talking to this entitled Karen and how it still bugged me deeply. He said he felt determined to get the $500 back and thought he could do it himself. I was dumbfounded and asked why he thought this would be any different than before. He said that she said she'd be able to start paying him back in July. And you know what? It is currently November. When he mentioned it last, he told me it was January. And I know he gets those months mixed up, but like, come on. I asked him if he really plans to play nice with her for over half a year, and he was baffled, confirming that he did mix up his months. I had to bite my tongue and stop myself from being too blunt at this point. I could tell that he already felt really dumb. I pointed out that he may think he has some kind of control control in the situation, but he never did. It's always been her terms and always will be when trying to engage with her level of crazy. Even if he never sends her another cent, she'll never send him another either. She only did last time when our roommate got involved because she didn't respect my husband. At the end of it, I told him that he needs to go no contact with this entitled Karen and not just block her like he said he did last time, but actually write a message to her saying that he'll no longer be talking to her anymore. He didn't have to be mean since he's not confrontational like that. Just convey the points clearly. He agreed and started saying that he just needs a couple of days to figure out what to say. I felt like this was good progress and I would check back soon. And he even got the $140 from the other user as well. Though this only happened because I ratted that friend out to our roommate, who is her ex, who was still convinced that she could patch things up with. The roommate was angry that she did this and told me exactly how she felt about my husband. And I told my fiance all of this. I felt guilty because we had just discussed the issue of him feeling like he doesn't have any friends. And I wasn't trying to be vindictive or hurt him. I just wanted him to finally open his eyes and realize how disgusting some of the people he kept in his life really were. And well, it honestly worked. We had another talk, but this time there weren't any excuses. My husband at least took this news as the kick in his pants to send the message to this entitled Karen. He essentially wrote that he's realized that some of the things she's been doing have been very manipulative and how she only hits him up to ask for money and rides. So he's ending the friendship and he won't be talking to her anymore. And she just responds by saying, okay. And as much as it made him see red as well, he simply put his phone down. I was yelling obscenities about her and was amazed at his ability to disengage. He said she probably just wanted a reaction, so he wasn't going to give it to her. But we both agreed though that he should wait to block her because we started to bet on how long it would take before she starts asking for money again. He said a few months and I laughed and said a few weeks tops. A few days later, my husband and I are spending time together. He then gets a text message from an acquaintance, and this is a genuine one. Thankfully, he does have a few of those. She's asking about a car part price. I already forgot what it was, but essentially, she went to get her oil changed, and the shop was checking things over and was like, oh man, this thing's busted. It's gonna cost $4,000. So he asked me if that sounded too high and relayed the story. Even I was like, yeah, I think the high end is supposed to be like, what, $1,200? But that straight up sounds like a scam. So he recommended her to his shop that he trusts and is way cheaper. She went there and got the part installed for only $800 and thanked him a bunch. So why is this relevant? Well, the next day, and I'm talking 3 days after he sent this entitled Karen the message, she ends up texting him again. She has the same story as his acquaintance. However, she's telling my husband that she needs $4,000 to fix her car. My husband just texts her back, telling her to go to the same shop he recommended to the other friend. She insists that no, she knows her car and knows she needs this part from this shop. He finally snaps and sends back a message, basically saying, okay, good luck, have fun begging online for that kind of money. And then he blocks her. Now it has been quite the peaceful few weeks. My husband and I felt closer again after we were more honest with each other. But this only lasted a few weeks though, because God forbid, we forgot about this entitled Karen's entitlement. One of her friends reached out to my fiance. This entitled Karen apparently wanted his computer. When we were all friends, he said she could have it when he got a new one. Obviously, that offer is no longer standing, and even if it were, it isn't even valid because he doesn't have a new one. She wanted the PC he was currently gaming on. Not that she would know that he still uses the same one anyways, but still, the audacity of this lady is insane. I feel like the beginning of karma may be in the works. She still makes new numbers to try and reach out to my husband, and he blocks her. But she did share that she got back with her ex, the same one who dumped her on Halloween and made me pity her enough to give her a second chance in our lives in the first place. So I'm sure it's a matter of time until they break up again. Hopefully when that happens, her partner takes the dog, because dear Lord, her most despicable crime is pet neglect. Her dog has so many behavioral issues, he would go to the bathroom on the carpet and even jumped out of a moving car twice. Anytime she would mention this to me, I tried to mention that those were the signs of a dog not getting enough attention, but she just didn't understand. She thought that because she would take him on a short walk once or twice a day, that should be enough. She seemed unable to comprehend that dogs aren't like cats, and they require a lot more stimulation, time, and energy. In the meantime, we're just waiting until she texts us again. And this is also we can try out my newest idea. We would pretend like we don't know her and act like this is the wrong number. I even told my husband, what she's gonna do is she's gonna call and check to hear your voice. But then you can just keep gaslighting her in the text messages. So this year, we're manipulating the manipulators. We're still being cautious since we don't know her motive motives and don't want to provoke an explosion once it actually dawns on her that my husband is done with her. I think since she knows that she's no longer getting anything from him, that probably won't happen. But based on her past unhinged behavior, I know not to rule anything out. This entitled Karen is crazy. I mean, seriously, talk about not getting the message. You've been blocked multiple times. You've been shut down every time you've tried to get money out of them. You've sent your friends to try and get their computer as well as $4,000 for a car part. I mean, this is clearly insane at this point. I think the only honest solution is to then just change your number because this lady seriously sounds crazy. But hopefully for the sake of all of this lady does in fact stay blocked and your husband and you don't have to deal with her ever again. Today I messed up by trying to be a gentleman and helping out a woman in need. But as a result, I got labeled a creep and was accused of doing something absolutely horrible. Here's what happened. So this situation happened the other night. I had received an invite from some friends to go out to a bar that is local to me. It's just a few blocks away, and I decided it would be best to just walk there. I am the only one in our friend group that lives within 15 minutes of a drive at the shortest. I was the last person to arrive, and the group was 6 people in total. 2 were a couple, and the other was a woman by the name of Val, that's not her real name, and I had known about her from the conversations with my friends. And it was right about then that I quickly realized that this was set up. The night went well, and we were drinking and having a good time when the couples decided to go home. By this time, Val and I were rather drunk. She was about to drive home when I told her she was way too under the influence to drive. She tried to argue with me, but I eventually won the argument. I told her I just live around the corner, and she was welcome to stay the night. There is no taxi service around us, so this really was our only option. She was hesitant, but agreed. On the walk back, it became pretty clear that she was way drunker than I had previously thought. It took us 30 minutes to walk 2 blocks. I ended up having to support her, and at one point even carry her to my apartment. I also realized how bad this looked, and hoped that no one would call the police or anything like that. We made it to my apartment, and she immediately took her shoes off and dropped her purse. I did a quick tour by standing in one spot and pointing out everything since it is a studio apartment. She saw my bed and jumped on it and proceeded to pass out. I was not nearly as drunk as she was, and I was trying to be respectful and responsible, so I grabbed an extra blanket and I put it on her for warmth as well as modesty, as she was wearing a dress. I grabbed a trash can, some water, and some hangover medication, and I put them all next to her. I remember her phone and purse, so I grabbed her purse and phone and decided to charge her phone, and I set it all next to where she was as well. I then prepared for bed myself and got the couch ready to sleep on, and I ended up passing out as well. I woke up and I heard the phone ringing. It was Val's. By the time I got up, it stopped ringing. Val had moved a little bit and somehow had taken off her dress, even though she still was under the blanket. I decided to get some coffee going and wake her up. I have never seen someone go from peaceful to confused to angry and then horrified and sick in such a short time in my life. When I woke her up, she threw up all over me, thankfully not getting any of it on the bed. She grabbed her phone with the charger still connected, wrapped herself up in the blanket, and locked herself in the bathroom. I set about cleaning up, and I could hear her talking quickly to someone. I took the water, the medication, and her purse, and I put them on the kitchen counter. She was crying and kept getting sick. She would not answer me when I asked if she was okay or needed anything. Now, at this point, I am now shirtless because I just took off all my clothes to clean and change. About 10 minutes after she ran to the bathroom, I heard a pounding on my door and yelling. It was one of our friends from the night before, and I honestly have no idea how she got to my place so fast. She was screaming through the door, calling me a disgusting pig, as well as so many other names. Now, I was confused. As I opened up the door, she pushed past me and went into the bathroom with Val. I stood there shocked. I put on a clean shirt, and I ended up just staying in my kitchen. I made 3 cups of coffee, and I just waited. 30 minutes later, they eventually came out. Val had on some spare clothes I had in the bathroom. I presented the coffee, water, and the meds to them. They were immediately defensive and aggressive. They demanded to know what happened the previous night, and so I went on to explain exactly what happened from when the friend left the bar. I also explained how Val was trying to drive home drunk, and I convinced her to not do that. I explained the long walk back to my place, the events of her passing out on my bed, as well as the blanket that I put over her. I pointed to the almost perfectly made bed, the trash can, and the charger halfway between the bed and the bathroom, as well as the water and the meds, and the obviously slept on couch. They then demanded to know where her dress was, and why I was no longer wearing a shirt when I answered the door. I calmly walked over to the bed, and I picked it up from the foot of the bed. I then reminded Val that she had just thrown up all over me. It took them a while, but I had to to tell them that all I did was take care of a friend in need. Nothing happened, and I would never do anything unless it was consented to a sober-minded individual. I also explained how I had been on the other side of this, and it was not pleasant. They got less aggressive and were able to see I was telling the truth. Val apologized and said that she didn't remember the end of the night. She woke up in a strange place, basically undressed, hungover with a strange person waking her up. My friend's girlfriend apologized and explained her side. She tried to call, and when Val didn't answer, she got worried because she didn't hear from her for the rest of the night or that morning. Then she got a frantic call from Val minutes later saying that she was in my apartment, undressed, scared, and very sick. She drove over, banged on the door, and when I answered with my shirt off, she feared the worst. She apologized again, took her coffee, and left. Val apologized for the freakout. I said that I have been there and I wouldn't hold it against her. We talked for a bit, but she got her things together. I walked her to her car, and that was over at the bar, and she ended up leaving after that. I received a message from her this morning since she had gotten my number from our friend, and she asked if we could hang out or something. She wanted to make it up to me for what she did the other night, as well as for taking care of her and not being a creep. And as of right now, I am going to be seeing her in a couple days. So with all things considered, I really hope it doesn't go poorly. What a crazy situation. Here you are just trying to help out someone you just met who was clearly trying to drive home drunk and give her a place to stay. There was obviously nothing sketchy going on, and you were literally just trying to be a nice person and help somebody out. But in the end, they freak out and start to accuse you of stuff that never happened. I can't imagine being in that situation. But hopefully your new date with this girl goes well. I mean, I'm amazed that Val even had the courage to reach out in the first place, because I know for a fact if that happened to me and I was in her shoes, I would never want to be in the same room as that person who took care of me ever again. I would personally be way too embarrassed to get anything going. So with all things considered, hopefully it all goes well and you're able to find some kind of common ground with this lady who did previously freak out on you. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.